At around 10:30, we did a little subscribers only event. So if you are a subscriber to our channel, an active subscriber on the Facts Still Matter HQ, you will get an opportunity to win. We're literally going to spin a wheel. It's like this virtual wheel. And of course, you guys know me in tech. I'm so up to speed. Said no one ever. We're going to do that. And then the winner will get their choice of any item in the merch store or a comparable charitable donation at a minimum of $50. And I just decided on that. So, yeah, so that's what's coming up. Oh, by the way, we have a little surprise for you guys. And there's our surprise.
Wait, hold on.
Okay, holding on.
Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry. I couldn't hear myself in my ears. Hi.
Hello.
I know. I missed you all. I'm not here for you. I'm here for everybody else. No, I'm just kidding.
You.
I missed your community so much. It's so good to see you guys. Good morning.
It's early for you. I know that because of the time change, it's now a 3-hour gap between us, Felice. So thank you so much for being here so early. I appreciate that.
I need to get used to getting up early anyways, because I live in Arizona and I run, and it's just getting hotter and hotter. So I have to get up this early because, it's not like I can be running at 3 p.m.
That's
soon.
true.
I'll die. So it's helping me switch my circadian rhythms.
Or you could not run at all but there's that too.
I'll tell that to my mental health. You don't want to know me if I don't run 10 miles a day.
That's right. So again, everybody, thank you for being here. And obviously we're so psyched and happy that Felice is going to join us. So please gift her like crazy. Really, really appreciate that. And again, just as a reminder, coming up at around 10:30-ish, we'll be doing our little spin the wheel drawing. And as a reminder, anybody who subscribes, active subscribers on factsstillmatter.site, the HQ, will be entered into that drawing, and then you can win your choice of merch items. You might want to get the hashtag poop hole loophole. If you know, you know. Feral as fuck. There's quite a few really cool items in there. Sweatshirts, t-shirts, mugs.
Like that hats. One. Feral as fuck.
I know. That's a good one. It's a good one. So again, thank you everybody. And on that topic, I want to just thank a few folks who joined our amazing team yesterday. Thank you to Millennial Kate, to Sharon, to Christine, to Paddle Kid, to Beck, Emma, Isabella, Chrissy, B-Moms, and Beverly for subscribing yesterday. So thank you. So hi, Felice.
Hello. Long time no talk.
Exactly. So I was thinking when I mentioned this particular topic to you, you're like, oh yeah, hell yeah. And we've got a lot of things to kind of get into, but I just kind of wanted to set the stage as to what was going on in my brain, because it's unfortunate that we have to refer to people to show courage or to exercise courage in our system of government now, because I'd like to think that they're doing their job and then defending and standing up for democracy and the rights of others. Well, thank you very much. But that doesn't seem like it's happening very much. So I think about people like this name gets thrown around a lot, like a Liz Cheney. And I'm thinking, was Liz Cheney courageous? I mean, I guess you could say potentially that she stood up to her own party, I guess, but she also voted to take away women's rights, and she also voted to take away rights of the trans community before she had an epiphany. So is she courageous? Somebody like an Adam Kinzinger, and I've got some sound I'll play from him a little bit. He's somebody who unfortunately is not in government anymore, but he's speaking out against his own party. I know you talk about this guy a lot, and I want to get your feelings on this. Mike Turner. I think about somebody like a Mike Turner who had a pretty prominent position. I think he was chair of the Intelligence Committee, which is a big gig in the House in particular. He's one of those gang of eight that would get included in these conversations. I thought since Mike Johnson pulled his cred and removed him from that chairmanship, that he might be somebody that could be courageous. Any thoughts on that in general?
Oh, yeah. No, I have tons of thoughts. I think I've seen, if you're playing an Adam Kinzinger video, I think I know what you're talking about. I think we all have to think about it with nuance, because it's multifaceted, right? Like, number one, yeah, I think the criticisms are fair, right? There's so much nuance. And for every person, I'm like, oh, they stood up to Trump. We could make 100 arguments of how, but also this. So I think many things can be always true at once. Yeah. But I think, let's just talk about Liz Cheney. I think she's a good example, because I agree more than anything as a woman, to me, Liz Cheney seemed almost inhumane, and that also comes from her daddy, Dick, he's, you know who Dick Cheney is. I mean, she comes from a line of possible sociopaths. So who knows? Who knows? But I will say this, and actually I'll find the clip I was playing yesterday. It's from this amazing, I don't know if he's actually a history professor or it's this video that Chrissy sent me yesterday on resisting. And what people need to understand is, we're all on the same team if you're not on the team of authoritarian fascist takeover, right? So however we have to resist, I think I look at it like nobody will do it for us, right? It's all of our own personal responsibility to dig our heels in and resist publicly through civil disobedience or whatever way we can. We can't count on anyone to do it for us. And I'm not saying that alleviates people in Congress of the responsibility of helping us. That's why we elected them and sent them there. But at this point, I don't even think we should bank on anyone but ourselves, right? We need to work on this. I see it as a bottom up, top down movement, Hopefully enough of them will get it together. But that's the question I keep asking on the people's receipts. How long does it take to grow a spine? Could be a long time.
That's exactly right. I was not surprised, to be honest, because the Senate I've always had concerns about the Senate just because of the body that they are. I'm not surprised that we had 10 senators stand up or not stand up and vote alongside fascists. So we can't count on them. You and I talked briefly about some of the people that I was potentially surprised by, but in hindsight and thinking back on it now, no, I'm not surprised. So we can't depend on them, which is why we discuss in this space all the time about voter activism down ballot, about volunteering in your community, running for school board, exercising your activism muscle, those kinds of things so that we can influence potential change. Because I agree with you. I mean, sadly, we've come to the point in our history where we're expected to just accept this. And I'm wondering if there is a line. So as part of this question, is there courage left in politics? Is there a line for elected members of the Republican Party in the House and the Senate to finally say, that's enough? That is enough. Are there members that will want to go back to their conservative roots to say, we don't want to be threatening nations. We don't want to be, going after Social Security, because that was something Republicans prior to Reagan would never have ever discussed. They would have never wanted to talk about cuts to Social Security. They wanted to look for ways to expand it. Medicaid, Medicare, tariffs that are going to harm their communities. I've got some data on some of the states that are going to be affected. And it's basically many, but it's things like that. So I'm just wondering, is there any appetite from any of these elected officials because ultimately it is the Republicans. They have an opportunity. Imagine a prominent member, whether it be Mike Turner or somebody else, coming out one day saying, I am introducing articles of impeachment against the president. Right?
Well, think about, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Think Mike about Johnson, it with Mike Turner, though, line with who he is. So Mike Turner, right? He might be a resistor. And this is how I look at it. This is when I say nuance. I see Mike Turner at first, he's simmering inside. He's angry about what Trump has done to him. If you read Capitol Hill blogs, if you listen to the people on Capitol Hill, the pages and the people that work for Congress people that are talking about what's going on, they say they all hate Trump. They all actively talk about hating Trump. They're like, this man's insane. It is a well-known, and I mean, not talking about Democrats. Obviously, Democrats don't like him, but Republicans. But then you see Mike Turner on Sunday Morning Politics and stuff, walking the Trump walk and talking the talk. But then I think, okay, I'm annoyed by that. But then when I think further, what is the option, right? If we get rid of Mike Turner, I promise the next person will be worse. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like with the Night of the Long Knives, when we talk about in, schmaltzy history, I mean, it's the true believers that they are picking off first, the Mike Turners, the Liz Cheneys, the Adam Kinzingers. And so I would just posit, we don't want those people to go. Even though they annoy me, I'd wish they do more. I'd wish they yelled louder. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But we actually need those people because what we've seen, I mean, think about the makeup of Congress 4 years ago, 6 years ago. It was so much different than it is now. And it's just moving towards, look, the moderate Republicans are gone.
Yeah, they really are.
And every time one drops and just says, I won't stand for this. Like, I thought Ken Buck was nuts. He was the chair of the Freedom Caucus for a while, but he was a prosecutor that knew the Constitution. I miss him.
Like, it's a good example.
And so it's like, I've learned, actually, I don't want these people to peel off because these are one of our last layers of literal defense at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I know you know this because, we pay attention to politics, but I think most people are accustomed to having such tight margins in the House. It's not normally like this. It's not normally a 1 or 2 vote. Usually it's a 15 or 20, depending. And that historically, if you go back to the 117th Congress, the 116th Congress, the margins were a lot wider. So you could, in theory, negotiate with some of your members to say, listen, I know you're in a swing district. This is an important vote. Here you go. Now that may have happened with Jared Golden in Maine.
That's what. Thank you for knowing. Thank you. I was trying to explain that to people that they're like, I'll forget. Like people were saying, Catherine Masto Cortez is a good example. She voted with the 8 or the 9 or you know what I mean. That it was at 9 or 10 that didn't. That voted for the funding bill, but she's next up for election in Nevada, which is a swing state, a union state that's very invested on that no tax on tips stuff. She's walking like a razor edge. So I was explaining to me, when I look at her state and because I'm right under it, I know a lot more about the position she's in and why she'd say, hey, I'm not going to rock the boat because I need to be reelected by Trump voters too. So I'm just and there's 2 women senators, her and Jackie Rosa did that state. Like, I could tell she's just like lay low and then the other side of that is what's the junior senator in Georgia, Ossoff? He's up for reelection. And so he was going to vote with those 10 and he didn't though, even though he's up for reelection and it might have been smarter. But see, those are the people. When you think strategically, a good minority leader would say, okay, I get it. Like Jared Golden is another example. He probably is like, I'm in this swing district. Like I'm walking this razor thin line. Like if you guys have the votes, like you're saying, and you guys are good, like, can I just, I need to just vote this way. Like it'll help me get reelected. Like there are those situations. And then there's Chuck Schumer. The minority leader in a blue state that Trump is terrorizing. That he's stolen money out of the comptroller's accounts that Congress appropriated, that he's, that he is literally blackmailing the mayor of New York City openly in front of all of us. So for me, like Chuck Schumer crossed a line, or maybe the right words are rang a bell that you cannot unring.
Unring. The situation with Golden, I think you're right. Because if you watch the count, like the one Democrat vote came like right at the end before the vote ended. And that was his
would have
vote.
Probably done it if they needed him. If there was a miracle, he was.
If there were 2 Republicans, in addition to who was it? Who was the Massey? Thomas Massey was the vote against. If one more had shown up, and there was talk
growing on me.
Yeah, and there was exactly, and there was talk about Mike Turner potentially being someone that might be gettable just because he wanted to be petty. Then I don't think Golden would have voted the way he did. So that's the politics side, right? I mean, I don't like it.
And that's how Hakeem Jeffries can count votes. You know what I mean? Like, and is doing it correctly. Like, I don't worry about the House. They seem younger. They're much more progressive. They're louder. They're fighting harder. You know what I mean? Like, I think they understand what's at stake. I think in the Senate, it's like old people who, have too many friends on K Street, are entrenched in there and have lost touch with reality.
Exactly. I was talking to somebody last week about you mentioned K Street. K Street's where the lobbyists live. Just in case people don't know. So those in the DMV, in that area surrounding DC, it's some of the most affluent real estate in America, and it's because of corporate interests in planting lobbyists just down the street from Capitol Hill so that they can be in knocking on doors all day long. And I agree about the Senate. They talk about the Senate as the world's most deliberative body. And that is true, but it's also where democracy goes to unalive many times. Like I just don't like the optics. I mean, there's new polling out about how America's has just continually seen lack of support for traditional Democrats, right? The numbers used to go from, even amongst Democrats, the numbers are now down around 60%, saying, do you think your party's on the right track? And I think we can all agree that status quo Democrats are not the future of the Democratic Party. It's progressives. And we talk about courage in politics. I know he's in a safe state that does not exist, but Bernie out there delivering the message, 82-year-old Bernie Sanders out there banging the drum for democracy everywhere he goes, bringing in massive crowds. And he's someone who's always had courage in politics. Bernie's like, I don't give a shit what you think about me. I'm going to talk about this. And he goes from swing state to red states to counties. It's amazing to see. And that's the kind of energy that I think we want to have in our party, in the party. I'm not going to say our
and
party.
It proves like this is not, because sometimes I feel bad. I feel like some of when my, anger about the Senate starts coming out, sometimes I don't want to ever seem ageist. And I think Bernie's an example. Chuck, get out and let Bernie be minority leader, right? I mean,
Agreed.
The energy is correct. The messaging is correct, right? Like, it's the same message. I'm obsessed with Robert Reich. If anyone in here doesn't know who Robert Reich is, he's Clinton's former labor secretary. If you like the message of Bernie Sanders, meet Robert Reich. It's spelled like Reich, R-E-I-C-H. He is a genius, right? And they focus on what? The middle class, labor, wages, all the things that matter, like socialism light. I love regulate capitalism, provide a social safety net, the right message. Like that, if Democrats do not get on Bernie's message for the midterms, I don't know how I'm going to handle it.
I agree. And it's a strategy at the top of the DNC, right? They've been afraid of progressives in their own party for a very, very long time. The moderate Democrats, the conservatives, because I think conservatives are fascists, conservative Democrats, conservative Republicans. That's why I speak of it in terms of there's conservatives and there are progressives. I'm trying to remove the label of R&D, red and blue, Republican Democrat. But you're right. I mean, it's the party. I think the biggest mistake strategically that the right has made, I did not like the reach out that Kamala Harris made to Liz Cheney. I talked about it here publicly. Instead, they're trying to recruit people from the right. So by design, they're pulling the party to the right. And I just think that is the wrong approach. When you've got issues like women's rights to their body, like responsible gun legislation, like support for universal health care, the overwhelming majority of the country wants those things. So I'm not going to support from dollars or from my time any Democrat that is going to be running for the presidency in 2028 that's not saying universal fucking health care. I feel like I said this to you like yesterday. I could not agree more. I say that all the time. Unless you're talking about universal health care, don't talk to any of us. Exactly.
Everybody wants healthcare. It's good for capitalism. Why wouldn't you keep your slave labor workforce healthy? Why wouldn't, for business owners, how much less do small business owners have to worry about building a business if they don't have to provide a health insurance for their employees and worry about that? Like the answer to most of our problems in this country, in my opinion, is universal healthcare.
Totally agree. I mean, on that small business topic, as a reminder, folks, on Thursday, right here, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, we're going to be doing a live that is going to be dedicated to small business owners. If you are a small business owner or if you know a small business owner and you want to come in and promote your business, you can use this space for that. I would just ask that you just be, quick and concise and clear, and we can move through this conversation quickly. As a small business owner, I think it's really, really important. It's the lifeblood of our democracy and our capitalism, the support and the job creation that happens with small businesses is really, like I said, the lifeblood of the middle class. So that'll be Thursday morning. All right. So real quick, gas prices.
Wait, can I say something just really quick? Guys, because Fax is so nice. Let's tap the screen for Fax. If you're ever all buy live on the People's Receipts, I'm kind of obsessed with tapping the screen. Let's get to 100K for Fax because he's an amazing person and creates this amazing safe space and awesome community. I feel so lucky every time I get to come here and hang out with you guys. So tap the screen. Everyone share the live with 10 people because we love Fax.
Thank you for saying that. The feeling's mutual, Felice. Gas prices remain flat, $3.79. I'm sorry, $3.08 a gallon. We know that the Dow has recovered slightly, but it's still down. It was, let's see, yesterday it closed at up 353 points for the week. It's up 74 points for the month, though. It's still down 2,627 points. And of course, we've seen, I'm sure you've seen this in your conversations with people. that the right is still attempting to blame the stock market downturn on Bidenomics, Felice. It's Bidenomics. And as we've discussed many, many times, the stock market is reactionary. So it responds to things that are happening, whether it be civil unrest, whether it be tariffs, whether it be threats, whether it be, bad economic policy. And we've seen it. You can literally look at a point in time when Trump said 25, 50% tariffs on whatever country, and the stock market can say, whoa, shit, we don't want that. We know that mega corporations, big box, buying up products before tariffs hit. We haven't even seen the tariffs really hit yet. That's the biggest thing. And listen, you're going to be talking to suburban moms down in the villages with their box wine that they get from France. Wait till that price goes up. Then they're going to really start getting angry. You don't want to be pissing off the soccer moms at the villages in Florida.
Trump says American champagne is going to do great.
Right. Exactly.
Is someone going to tell him that champagne can only come from a region in France? Trump is the least intelligent person. Don't worry, guys. The American champagne industry is going to do amazing. So don't worry about it. It's the one industry that doesn't exist in this country will be doing amazing.
Exactly. Since we spoke about everybody, please continue to like and share the live. Please, please, please make sure Felice is, why is she sitting at 547 coins? Get busy out there, y'all. All right. I wanted to kind of
my Cash App and Venmo is a girl has no name, just like my account. So if you would like to tip me that way or have a question, I will read it out loud. I just realized I should open my emails and stuff.
So cool. There's still, I know you probably talked about this yesterday, but the calls from the Trump administration about illegal news networks, reminiscent of 1930s Germany, and then this whole illegal deportation when a federal judge steps in and says, you can't do this. The spin coming from Caroline Leavitt is just mind-boggling to me.
I call her Caroline.
That works too. It's the playing in our face thing that really drives me crazy. Expecting the American people to believe that what the judge did by holding the executive branch in our country accountable is exactly what the system is supposed to do. And then, Caroline goes out and says, let me see if I can find the clip. I have it somewhere. And just says basically lies.
She's as bad as Trump. She started, I just will never forget that first press conference where she was like, she's cruel like Trump too. She honestly reminds me cruel. Before I had to have 10 years of therapy. She's angry AF. And she just spews Trump's lies. I remember her saying, oh, you'll only get the truth from me here. That was,
I know.
I don't think she has told the truth once.
She's doing her job, which is spreading more lies and misinformation.
But how dare they be something's wrong with Karine Jean-Pierre, who had decades of experience in PR. Don't worry about Karine. You are an effing mess. She's worse than, what's her name? What was the one that's now on Fox? McEnany?
Kelly
she's
McEnany?
Worse than, she's worse than her. That's actually, true. And now Sarah Huckabee Sanders is starting to look competent. I'm starting to realize, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, it was actually better than all these people. Caroline, I don't know if I should feel bad for her, though, because she's married to someone 30 years older than her. Mm-hmm. So I'm it's a creepy Trump type situation, which I'm do we need to save her?
It's a very creepy Trump-like situation.
Look up Caroline's husband, who she had a baby and took no time off work. She had a baby and was on the campaign trail. I think she had the baby in the hotel room.
I think you're probably
showed
right.
up at a Trump rally.
You're probably right with the bloodletting. Anyway, let's. This is Caroline being questioned about these illegal, unconstitutional deportation flights that a judge in our system said, no, you can't do this. This is against the law. So this is what she had to say.
Judge's written order, which hit the docket Saturday night at about 7:26 p.m. But he issued a verbal order before that at about 6:45 and 6:48 p.m. based on the court hearing. A verbal order from the bench. Does the White House feel the need to comply with a verbal order from this judge?
Again, as I said, all of the planes subject to the written order of this judge. departed U.S. soil, U.S. territory before the judge's written order.
But what about the verbal order, which of course carries the same legal weight as a written order, and said for the planes to turn around if they were
Well,
in the air?
there's actually questions about whether a verbal order carries the same weight as a legal order as a written order, and our lawyers are determined to ask and answer those questions in court.
There are questions among idiots. There's questions among idiots. That's what I like. Yes, I'm sure Mega, like amongst Caroline has a thing where she like, is this, it's like she's getting like a law class from Trump, and it's fascinating because it's like, who in the F she has no knowledge of the Constitution. Like she is out of her mind. And she's like, well, I spoke to a lawyer. No, you didn't.
No, you
like
didn't.
You don't have any, nobody's wondering that. And there's a great independent journalist who's like friends with Aaron Reichlin Melnick. I was going through this yesterday, like who mapped, like used FAA, like Federal Aviation Administration flight records, like has the timeline down to minutes. They absolutely violated that judge's order multiple times. The plane stopped in Honduras, like to fuel. Like it's not like they went straight there. They absolutely violated that judge's order. And they had like a fact finding hearing yesterday about it.
The part to me that again, like I say, they're playing in our face because we know that because the sound bites will be filtered through the right wing echo chamber to the base, and they will generally believe that KK Caroline Levitt is right, but she's just flat out wrong. She is, an order from a judge is an order from a judge. And we talk about this in terms of a constitutional crisis. Well, this is another example of one when you have the judiciary, a federal branch of our government. This was a federal judge that issued this order, and the executive branch is just saying, I'm going to ignore it. We're going to ignore it. We're just not going to pay attention. So everybody is, again, part of our conversation today about courage and politics. When members of the Republican Party in particular, who's always been on we believe in our system of government. We believe in small government. We don't want government overreach. We don't want violation of the separation of powers. This would be a time for them to say, well, actually, no, an order from a federal judge is binding, whether it's on a napkin or from their own mouth, it's still binding.
From the bench. It's like when that federal judge was saying, hire back all those workers, that probationary workers you got rid of. And he said, like, I was reading the court documents. Well, Rachel Maddow read a lot of them on her show too, if anyone happened to see it. And the judge said, I know what you're going to try to do. Do not wait for the written order. This is a verbal order from the bench. You can consider it binding now.
Exactly. It's binding now. So it's in direct violation of federal law. Similarly, we don't talk about this enough, but tariffs imposed on Mexico and Canada violates the USMCA, which is a treaty.
Trump's own deal that he's going. Trump never goes back on his deals. That's so strange.
Why would he do that? Why would he? I'll see if I can find the sound somewhere. I don't know who the hell signed this stupid deal. Well, you did. You signed this stupid deal.
Then you had to amend it and rename it so you could say you invented it when really it's just NAFTA.
It's NAFTA.
So it was all you.
Exactly. So again, that's kind of the theme of what we're going to talk about today, because, there are so many opportunities, and I don't expect much from the Democrats. I think the House is showing me, I think Hakeem Jeffries, the jury's still out for me. It will really come down to the budget. If he can get his entire caucus to vote against that horrible budget and the cuts to Medicaid and the cuts to social services and the cuts to, cancer research for kids and all those kinds of things. If he can't get his party on board with that, then I would question his leadership chops, quite frankly. So the jury's out there. I have no faith in the Senate. I have no faith whatsoever in the Senate. And that's concerning. Especially since if we can't trust our own party, if we're not willing, again, I don't want to affiliate with the Democratic Party per se, because I'm a progressive, but it's the easiest way to bright, so to speak. Victoria uses this analogy and I like it. It's public transportation. It doesn't get me all the way there, but it gets me to the street corner where I can walk the last 5 blocks, so to speak. So I wanted to talk a little bit, and we should shift our focus a little bit to what happened last night in Gaza. So the ceasefire, as we expected, was not going to last. So the Israeli government strikes across Gaza that unalived at least 404 Palestinians and then shattering the ceasefire. So we kind of expected that to happen. Remember, right after it was signed, one of the statements made from the Oval Office was that Trump was all about this and congratulating himself for this ceasefire. None of us expected that to hold. Similarly, Trump and Putin are scheduled to meet today to discuss the ceasefire, the proposed ceasefire, which, by the way, Russia has not signed yet or agreed to. So now we're going to cut up Ukraine and basically give Russia everything that they wanted, which is not an agreement. It's literally, we talk about this all the time. The things that Putin wanted was the territory that he took in Ukraine and Ukraine to not be in NATO. And that's basically everything that they're going to give them, which is just disturbing and horrible. Just back to the whole Gaza thing. So there's this reporting that I found about a summit recently between a lot of members of Arab states, Arab leaders. So they amongst themselves have approved a $53 billion Gaza reconstruction project, rejecting Trump's Gaza Riviera proposal. At an emergency summit in Cairo last week, Arab leaders have approved a $53 billion reconstruction plan for Gaza, rejecting the Trump Gaza vision and the U.S. plan to take over, which would lead to mass displacement of more than 2 million Palestinians. The 23 to 25 conflict is still raging, obviously. Ceasefire being broken last night. According to the UN, 90% of homes were damaged and or destroyed. And according to Reuters, over 45,000 people have lost their lives. Egypt has put forward the reconstruction strategy outlined in a 91-page document featuring visualizations of green residential areas and grand public buildings. The plan foresees rebuilding Gaza by 2030 without displacing its population. The reconstruction effort is set to unfold in 3 phases. The initial 6-month phase, with a budget of $3 billion, will focus on clearing debris from Salah al-Din Street, reconstructing temporary housing, and restoring partially damaged homes. The second phase, spanning 2 years and estimated costs of $20 billion, will continue debris removal, develop essential infrastructure, and expand residential housing. And the third phase and final phase, projected to cost $30 billion over 2.5 years, will aim to complete housing for Gaza's entire population, establish the first phase of an industrial zone, and construct critical economic infrastructure, including fishing, commercial ports, as well as an airport. Now, this all sounds really great, but then when you read on, according to Al Jazeera, funding will come from a mix of international sources, including the UN, global financial institutions, and then this part, foreign governments and private sector investments. So whenever I hear private sector investments, I always think, okay,
private
cool.
Equity sounds awesome.
Exactly. Private equity firms. So this is a bit of a change. Obviously, I think the Arab states are realizing the things that Trump has said about Gaza, first of all, were really horrible. And we actually have audio.
You keep talking about the judge's written order, which hit the...
we have audio, some of the things that he has said specifically about his approach to Gaza. And I think it's worth a reminder for people as to things that he has said. So here's that audio. Hold on.
Them into beautiful areas. I say, we go in, we knock them all down. There's nobody there. We move them into beautiful areas of the Middle East. And
would the Palestinians have the right to return?
No, they wouldn't.
So that was the question. Would the Palestinians have the right to return? And he said, no, they would not.
Palestinians out of Gaza. Are you discussing that with him and giving him your...
Nobody's expelling any Palestinians. I don't know. Who are you with?
I'm a Voice of America, sir.
Oh, no wonder. I say, we go in, we knock them all down.
Yeah. So again, the just the horrible rhetoric. Again, where's the line? Where's the line when you say you're going to turn Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East? They produced and published those horrible AI generated movies of Bibi Netanyahu and Trump sitting down in their beach chairs, sipping cocktails on the beach of the Gazan Riviera, meanwhile displacing millions of Palestinians and expecting other countries to take their immigrants. Isn't it funny, Felice, is that the president of the United States can tell other immigrants where they should go, but not in our own country, right? Or basically saying, we're going to just kick your ass out because you don't deserve to be here, but yet expecting other countries to take their immigrants from Gaza. It's pretty disturbing when you hear these things, especially now that how do you negotiate out of this one? I'm waiting for a True Social post to talk about how the ceasefire was broken. I haven't seen it yet.
Well, yeah, I just think, and there's videos of Netanyahu talking about this. I mean, years and years and like decades ago, just saying the destruction of Palestine was always the point. You know what I mean? That's essentially what it is. It's a social engineering project that slowly is engineering these people out of existence. And when they get impatient, then they all of a sudden they're at war with a T group, because then you can declare war. And then, they clean house, quite literally. And that sounds, but I just don't know what other words to use. So, I mean, this was always the plan. There's a Washington Post exclusive I was going through yesterday as it relates to Putin, which is very similar, right? Like they got a hold of, European intelligence, Europol got a hold of think tank documents, like from the Russian equivalent of the Heritage Foundation, that basically lays out all of their plans they have no intention of a ceasefire, similar to Netanyahu. They're all just stall tactics while they continue carrying out what they want to do. And ironically, what this document lays out, the talking points in the plan are exactly what Trump is doing and saying. Cause division between the U.S. and China, cause division between the European Union and the United States. Trump is literally a lapdog for Putin. And it's the same way with Netanyahu. This has all been orchestrated. Just because I see the world in patterns, I think it's very clear what their goal has always been.
Oh, there's no denying that. I mean, we've discussed this many times about how it's part of the distraction, right? So I'm gonna do all these things over here that people are gonna comment on and talk about, whether it be violating federal law with deportation flights or saying that the press is illegal, things like that. It's all intended to enrich. It's all intended to, like you said, lapdog, bend the knee for Putin. Think about the recent reporting about literally sending the U.S. military to Panama. Why the Panama Canal? Because there's sanctions against Russia. Why wanting to take over Greenland is because it opens up, it exposes the NATO, the base there that supports NATO. Canada with all their resources, the whole Alaska game. I mean, this is all part of the plan. Like, we talk about this a lot. Don't mean to sound like a broken record, but this is all part of the autocratic shift in our globe. Economics, politics, you see it time and time again, realigning of allies. And I think the Trump administration in particular doesn't think that anyone will stand up to it. Right? I think they really feel like European countries will cave, that Canada and Mexico will cave. That's not what we've seen. That is not what we've seen at all. And it's inspiring, quite frankly. And I'd like to see more of it here. I don't want to see apathetic voters anymore. I want to see more participation democracy. I want to be able to rely on elected officials to say enough's enough, country over party. And we just don't see it.
Yeah, Well, first of all, Frankie, thank you so much on YouTube for the super chat. Frankie said, "Good morning, beautiful lady with this marvelous brain. My favorite compliment. Thanks for complimenting my brain."
Indeed.
I appreciate you so much. I agree. I just think, again, I have this clip I should probably play at some point because it's fascinating to listen to. But I actually think we have a really unique opportunity as Americans to stop, being, free range cattle and get in the game, right? Like, I think, and I was saying this yesterday to everyone, it's scary. The future before us is scary. The number one point is we can never go back. America's never going to be the same. The only thing that matters is what we do next now and how we want to be remembered. And I'm actually glad we're all being called upon to take action, to resist, to display civil disobedience. And it's that pressure, in my belief, if we want to talk about, is there any courage left in politics? It is the pressure that will come from us, the American people, that will help. And again, I wish they had it on their own. Some do. Jasmine Crockett, Maxwell Frost, the progressive. Some people are, Bernie Sanders. Some people have it on their own, and some people need a reminder that you're only serving in Congress at the pleasure of your constituents. And that's why these town halls are amazingly important. Or if people won't have them, then you have a protest, right? Our voices are being heard. And that's why we need to hold Chuck accountable. And I'm glad it happened. I'm glad it happened now, right? Before this big, beautiful bill where they are literally going to drive our country into the ground.
Correct.
And so that's why we need to hold Chuck Schumer accountable. That's why we need to voice our displeasure now. So people know, like, hey, you did it once, don't do it again.
Something you said I want to pick up on, because I talk about this a lot. Like, we're all here at this particular point in history on this wild ass timeline that we're on, and we're given an opportunity. You know, the people, the voting public, the constituency, the American citizens, we're given an opportunity, and it'll be curious to see what people do. It really will be curious. This will be something that will be studied one way or another. Will we succumb to fascism and the autocratic takeover of our country, or will we not? There's no gray area there. It's very black and white. What are we going to do? Like, I know the veterans marches over the weekend were very well attended. I know that there are the 50-51 state capitol protests. I know that there are more coming, and these are the kinds of things that are important, but I just don't want people to stop and feel like, hey, I went to a protest. Good for me. It's going to take more than that. Like, are you running for school board? Are you going to be good trouble? Are you going to go and volunteer in your community? Because when I say do something, and I know you know this, Felice, and I'm sure you would agree, doing something is just that, doing something. You may not be cut out to run for office. You may not be a community organizer. You may not be good at fundraising, but you might be good at something that would help your community. Go and defend the rights of others. Volunteer to read to children after school, because we know the Department of Education budget's going to be cut. So there's going to be very, very few extra services available to kids who need it the most. That's my concern. The apathy of the American voter, because we are entitled here. We don't like to be inconvenienced. We don't want to have to wait an extra 5 minutes for our DoorDash. We are spoiled as a society, and I'm concerned about that, quite frankly.
No, but there's an opportunity when things get bad to thrive in the chaos, to find out what you're made of. I can almost cry talking about this because it's the beautiful moments in life, right? When you're the most uncomfortable, that's when there's growth, right? Like when you're right, Americans sit a lot of the time in either apathy or just general relative comfort. And in my opinion, it actually makes us all more miserable. Like, agreed. When we have something to lose, something to fight for, like, in my opinion, that's when we're truly alive. And it's like, I just can't say enough. Do not think that anyone's going to save you. We have to save ourselves. We put the pressure on these people. And I've talked about this, and I don't know what that looks like. Like, I think facts we've talked about, definitely virtual town halls. I think that should be our future, is starting to put together virtual town halls with like Matt and maybe Mr. Global and Dr. Danny and people and Mandy, things like that. I think that could be something we could do. And then also, like, we need to really start using, because I talk about this when I talk about socialism, or like, what do we have? We're not idiot. We're not MAGA, right? We're not dumb enough to do a J6. So, because that's never going to work. And that's what Trump wants. But what do we have power over? We can stop consuming and we can stop working, right? These are the levers that we have. We can grind this economy to a halt while screaming as loud as possible for change.
Absolutely. I mean, something that you touched on, like I always talk about how oftentimes the greatest gifts in life are on the other side of the door of fear. So we tend to operate in this apathy or this under duress and pressure. And again, as a cis white hetero man in America, I have to be very careful because I got to check my privilege here, because I can go anywhere, I can do anything. There's nothing going to get in my way. And I am very public about using my privilege to kind of remind other people who look like me that they've got to do more. It's not going to change unless we're willing to change it. And I love what you said. We talk about this too, about we need to be uncomfortable, like self-imposed uncomfort by, things are going to get hard because they need to. And we had a really good debate about this last week. And, I don't want the system to burn, because I know the people that are always impacted the most are going to be the ones that are going to be harmed the most. But it may take that happening for us to get some of the change that we so desire, right? We've got to demand universal health care. We have to demand it. No more settling for little bites of the apple. No more settling for, let's talk about thoughts and prayers after a mass unaliving event. We need to demand responsible gun reform, because if we don't, then what is it that we're fighting for? What is it? We need to be demanding women's rights to their body are codified into law. We need to demand that this hateful rhetoric against the trans community in particular just stops. And I don't know if there's a big enough appetite for our current batch of elected officials. So it's going to take us. Whether we take I know some people can't take their money out of the bank. I don't want to go down that road. That's a different conversation. Some people don't have that advantage, but we are a consumption society. Do we need to participate in capitalism as much as we do? Can we divide between the need and the want and do less of the
consumer? Want? Yeah, the consumerism is what we need to stop. I agree. And
exactly.
I just want to answer some people who are saying in the comments, who can stop working? Then don't. Right? Like,
exactly.
That's a personal choice, right? Like, and I would suggest looking at, I think it's generalstrike.us maybe, right?
Yeah.
And it's this idea, like, not everyone has to stop working, right? It's just a matter of some people already have. The federal government has been shut down. People have been laid off. Like me as a pansexual, brown, part black, part indigenous woman, like I'm in a lot of danger in like where I am in the situation I am. And I can keep working right up until what? I lose all of my rights and something horrible happens to me. Like I am at a point where I truly almost have nothing to lose. And that's a personal decision, everyone. What does resistance look like for you, right? I used to make $200,000-$300,000 in the tech industry and advertising, like base. I mean, I made a lot of money and then I decided to give all that up, disappear into South America and be a drifter because like that's what I had to do to figure out what was important. And in my opinion, I come from a place of privilege of not having children, right? So I don't have dependents. And so that is a different story for me, right? And what I have learned is the work I was doing, the 100 hours a week for all that money, though I was a prisoner, a slave to capitalism. And it wasn't until I got rid of everything I owned and lost everything that now I'm actually free. I mean, and that's just a personal experience. I understand people have different family situations, different dependents, people they need to take care of. It's all just, what does resistance look like to you? Like Steve was saying, what I might be good at in terms of the resistance, maybe someone else has a different skill set, right? Like that. I mean, that's what we all have to look at.
You said it. I couldn't say it any better. Good morning, Eve. I don't know if you guys have ever met. I think you have, Eve.
Yes, we have.
Eve, okay.
Good morning, Felice.
I'll take a quick break. I'll be right back.
Hi.
Good. Well, hey, everyone. I'm here to remind you to please support our amazing hostess with the mostest. He's our big-brained, boisterously brilliant broadcaster breaking down bullshit and bringing us facts over feelings because facts still matter, and they always will. So, if you have the means, let's help Fax meet his gift goal. You can find the pay apps on the link tree of his bio, as well as the Fax HQ and Discord link. You can reach the HQ via factstillmatter.site, where we've got news and media, live sources that are referenced here on the show, as well as community resources. You can view and purchase merchandise. And if you're a sub, you can get 10% off merch. It's one of our perks. If you aren't a sub, you're just straight missing out, especially if you're going to place an order. It will literally pay for itself because you get that 10% off the merchandise. Also,
I love your alliteration. It's the best thing ever.
Thank you. I love them too. So if you can still join and subscribe now to get entered for the Luck of the Irish raffle, which we will be spinning the wheel of names here towards the end of the show for a winner, for a chance to win a item of your choice from the merchandise store. Also, towards the end of the month, on Saturday, March 29th, we're going to be having a Cards Against Humanity game night with 3 different time slots to choose from. Signups are in Discord with prizes again, y'all. Speaking of Discord, if you're just looking
That's
for
really
that
cool.
So,
I
by the
love
way,
Cards Against Humanity.
The best Cards Against Humanity card is Grandma's side boob. I'm sorry, but that is the best one of all of them. Sorry.
Have the darkest humor. That game was meant for me.
For all of us. Nobody wants to admit, though.
Yeah, there's no losers. Everyone's a winner, really, at the end.
Very true.
But we are going to have prizes for the winner of each round. And speaking of Discord, if you're just looking for that fun free forum for the facts friendly to frolic, then Discord is the place. It's our premier social hub. If the link in the link tree doesn't work, please try and copy and pasting it into a browser or Google. That usually works. But if it doesn't, just reach out to a moderator and we'll hook you up. When you join, please open a ticket to verify your account. There's a couple of quick questions to answer. It is part of the process that we go through to maintain a safe space for our community. If you have questions about that, ask in the unverified lobby and we'll walk you through it. The mutual aid channel of Discord has a few folks looking for some help, and if you can spare a few extra dollars, please consider doing so. No amount is too small. It all adds up, y'all. It really does. Now, if you haven't already, please click that follow or orange heart up at the top of the screen next to Fax's name. You can join the team for the cost of a penny. You can do this every day, and it helps keep us relevant and on the FYP. As I mentioned, there is a gifting goal, but if you can't donate, no worries. All we ask is that you interact in the comments as well as tapping your little hearts out. It's always free to tap and share out the live. If you don't have any friends, just click the copy link. It works the same as a share. No one will be the wiser. And start chatting in the chat. Meet some positive people. We have the best people in our chat. Steve has built an amazing community here, so take advantage of that, y'all. After this live stream, head on over to YouTube and subscribe to Facts Still Matter there. Like a video as well, please. You can rewatch shows for any information that you may have missed, and subscriptions on YouTube are free, just like following your favorite creators here on TikTok. So with that, I'll say be kind, smile at a stranger, and have a fuck your feelings kind of day.
Are you ready to slide?
That's amazing. I just want to say, Cookie, thank you so much for the $20 on YouTube. I've missed you. So happy to catch that big old brain again. No need to read. Oh, I just read it. Wanted to say hi. I miss you too. Sorry.
That's funny.
It's early. I don't know what I'm doing. I just read the beginning. It almost made me tear up. I haven't seen you in a while. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Eve, and thank you, everybody. Just as a reminder, we're doing the drawing for the giveaway at a minimum, either merch item or a minimum $50 donation to the charity of your choice from me. Millennial Kate, Sharon, Christine, Paddle Kid, Becky for subscribing recently. I appreciate you. So I wanted to kind of talk about a couple of other things. Andy Ogles on X yesterday posted this. I have filed articles of impeachment for two of the activist judges stonewalling President Trump, John Bates, and stonewalling President Trump. The judges' names are John Bates and Amir Hatem Mahdi Ali, both of whom were appointed by Democrats and sit on the U.S. District Court for Washington, D.C. It's time to hold them accountable. Let's get it done. So you'll remember that Elon Musk sort of started this whole push saying, in our system, we have checks and balances where the judiciary checks the executive, et cetera, right? So judges coming out with rulings saying that this is unconstitutional, doing their job, not being courageous, just
it's
doing
their literal job. The federal judiciary's job is to check the power of the executive branch. That
exactly.
is their only effing job.
Right. So because they didn't like it, because they didn't like these Democrat woke liberal judges standing up to the Trump administration, they now want to file articles of impeachment against all these judges. Well, Stephen Miller, we know Mr. I don't even know the appropriate nickname for Stephen Miller because there's so many that we could use. That works. Yeah, that's a good one. Let's use that one. This is an interview that he did on the lawn of the White House, and I just think we'll just listen to it because there's no really commentary necessary.
Of the Departments of Justice, Homeland Security, and Defense were not in conflict with the judge's order. But at the same time, it is also true that the judge's order was patently unlawful. Beyond unlawful, it was an outrageous assault on the Constitution, an outrageous assault on the sovereignty of the nation, and on democracy itself. The American people elected a president on an explicit promise. By the way, for those of you who followed the campaign, how many times was the Alien Enemies Act discussed in the campaign, right? Is one of you unaware of this? Not one of you is, right? This was discussed extensively in the campaign, going back even to the primary, right? On Agenda 47, walking through the use of the Alien Enemies Act. The American people voted for this specific action to occur, and it has occurred, and it is occurring, and it will continue to occur. And the idea that a single district court judge has the authority to direct,
they do,
as though they were the president, the movement of airplanes around the globe is, again, it is the most outrageous thing I've seen from a district court judge in my lifetime, but frankly, going back multiple lifetimes.
For that point,
yes.
And that's how you know like I say this, MAGA is a combination of idiots and pathological liars, or a combination of both. That's and Stephen Miller is a lawyer, right? Yeah. Like, so just this man passed the bar. He's just a liar.
It's the fucking gaslight. I mean, he's literally telling people that the judge violated the law by doing their job, which is to enforce the fucking law. Like, it's... Can
I tell you another piece of this hypocrisy that you probably didn't miss it, but it's hilarious. So not just Friday, when Trump showed up at the DOJ and gave that,
my God.
And whatever her name is waving around a pen of yayo saying it's not real, but it's like, why are you holding it then? Like,
right.
Did you see her? She had like a brick of snow waving around, being like, exactly. It's not real. It's like, why are you holding it then? This is very strange. God, these people are nuts. But anyway, it was like, but during that speech, one of the first things Trump started screaming about, he said, it's illegal, in fact, for people to be mean or to say cruel things about federal judges, and specifically Aileen Cannon.
Exactly.
So on Friday, if you disparage judges, if you don't listen to their rulings, that's a crime he's going to go after you for. But correct. Oh wait, those are just apparently not all judges, just the idiot ones that agree with Trump.
Yeah, just the woke leftist lunatic judges. Those are the ones.
Is it illegal to criticize judges or not? You said it was illegal on Friday. Now you're out here trying to impeach and threaten. Yeah. They're putting their names on Fox. I have a still I was showing yesterday. They're literally putting their pictures, first and last names up. Nice. They're basically doxing and trashing them, giving a hit list to crazy MAGA.
This goes to some of the campaign rhetoric where he talked about, people who burn the American flag should spend time in jail. People who criticize, judges should spend time in jail. And then when we have conversations with our friends on the right, when we say, listen, your administration is all about taking the rights away of people, and we give those examples, they're like, well, the states' rights, brother. Those aren't taking rights away. Yes, they are. They're exactly taking rights away. The one that let me just finish this interview. It's quick.
To successfully remove these individuals?
The president has a vast array of authorities to remove illegal aliens. The Alien Enemies Act provides particular and additional authorities to achieve these removals as quickly and as expeditiously as possible. But most importantly, it allows it to occur in a way that ensures the lowest level of risk for the American people, the least possibility of individuals absconding, escaping, or otherwise frustrating their removal.
So,
you mean due process?
I was just going there. I'm sure you picked up on this. We're brain sharing again, Felice. When Trump gave his inaugural address and then he spoke out on the campaign trail, when he used the word invasion in one particular speech, I think it was like 19 times he used that word. That's by design. So in their mind, and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, as it relates to the Alien Enemies Act and to the Insurrection Act, what he is trying to do in positioning this with the Supreme Court in particular is to say that this is an invading army. And because this is an invading army, I have a right as the president to invoke the Alien Enemies Act to remove these people from the country. Now, under that condition, if that were the case, then that invading army would not be subjected to due process because they would be an invading army. So that's their attempt to justify this. So, again, this is the constitutional crisis that we've been warning people about. This is just one example. We've seen numerous other examples, but this is one in particular where one branch of government says, you can't do this. You are violating the law. And the executive branch, with people like Stephen Miller, Goebbels Light, is saying, no, the president has this unchecked authority. That was in Project 2025. This is the Opus Dei mindset of the unitary executive, consolidation of power, to give the keys to the car to the executive branch. Because in our system, the legislative branch has the most power. Yes, the veto power of the veto, but it's by design, it's a legislative branch, right? And they check each other. They don't like that. They, being the Christian nationalists, takeover of our country. They think the president has unchecked authority. The Supreme Court said you've got immunity, so that kind of tracks. And then here we are with Stephen Miller saying this judge overstepped. The judge is the one that violates the Constitution. The judges are the ones that should be impeached. It is mind-boggling.
Yeah, I think this is the way we need to think about this as Americans. And this is the bottom line is if you are, and I say this to MAGA in the most loving way I possibly can, if you are not smart enough to recognize that a man or the government, who you guys don't trust the government, this is a time when impact studies, statistical analysis shows you absolutely should not trust the government. And we are basically saying one man can point at whoever he wants, say that person is a criminal, and then they are disappeared from the country without due process.
Yep.
And sent, I don't know if everyone understands where these people are. They are in a prison camp in El Salvador.
Correct.
Being used for slave labor. If you don't know, Bukele, we used to have the most, by percentage of our population imprisoned. Far and away more than anyone else until El Salvador. Bukele has like 3% of his population in prison. Or more. People don't know because there's no due process there anymore. And he runs slave labor camps that fund his country. That's what prison labor. That's what he is now doing. And not just, I think MAGA can also agree on this, so you don't need to, nothing else matters. Trump is creating a world. And of course he's saying these were criminals. These were gang members. Well, I can tell you as someone that's did research and really deeply looked into this, that actively there were scheduled immigration hearings to dispute these lies, right? I'm not saying it's not possible that none of them were in Tren de Aragua, but actively immigration lawyers are like, we had a hearing scheduled to prove that what the United States government was accusing my client of was in fact 100% a lie. In fact, one of these men who was taken there, tortured, had his head shaved, is in that absolutely insane video of Bukele's. He's a gay man. He's part of the LGBTQIA. He's an artist. And that is the reason he was fleeing, was because he was not safe, as part of the LGBTQIA. It's hard in Spanish speaking countries, especially for a gay man. It can be, unsafe. And he was seeking asylum because of gang activity and because he was part of the LGBTQIA, and now is trapped in this prison labor camp in El Salvador with no due process. So that's all you need to know. We need to protect all of our rights. I will fight for MAGA's rights to due process.
Same.
And it would be smart for them to do the same for us. We should never live in a world where Trump, a very irrational wacko who paints himself orange every morning, can point at someone and say, you're a criminal. No one can say anything. No one could dispute that. You don't get a lawyer. You don't get due process. I'm just going to disappear you. And then, oh, I forgot my second part. The tax dollars. I don't know if you guys are aware. Our tax dollars are paying Bukele. Exactly. He's already using these people for slave labor to fuel his own economy. We are paying, and he said a small fee. Like, it's not like we just deported these people and they're gone. We're paying to keep them in El Salvador, outside of U.S. jurisdiction and outside of due process. And if you know, where we keep the worst T-ists is Guantanamo, the Al-Qaeda. They have due process. That's why we can't get rid of them. Correct. They all have lawyers. It's a very delicate situation. If you think you do something wrong and you don't get a lawyer, you get a lawyer.
I'm glad you said that, because they're, the taxpayer dollars used to put people who have not, and I've not heard any descriptions of the crimes that they have allegedly committed. So taxpayer dollars used to violate the law, to violate the rights of people that are here, to violate the Constitution, and your taxpayer dollars are paying for that. We haven't heard from this brilliant legal mind in a while. Would you like to hear from Bobo on her thoughts on this whole thing?
She does always have the best thoughts.
Yeah, so we're gonna tap into the mind. There's a lot of room in there. Tap into the mind of Lauren Boebert on her thoughts on this. Here we go. Everybody, pay attention. Take notes.
Right now, but in the House of Representatives, we need to do our due diligence and impeach these radical Soros-funded judges. That is our responsibility to the American people, and how we uphold the Constitution and truly have a check and balance on the other branches of government.
Wow. That was profound, Bobo.
She only knows a few words.
She does. She does. When I speak in terms of courage, I think it's things like this. Like, people, Mahmoud Halil and others, people whose rights have been violated, plain and simple. Their rights to due process, their rights protected under the 14th Amendment and other amendments to the Constitution. When I speak to courage, these are the things that I would love to see from members of the Republican Party, to stand up to say, listen, we're not going to agree on budget cuts. We're not going to agree on tax policy, et cetera, et cetera. But can we all agree that constitutional rights are being violated here without any explanation? I mean, we'll play Tom Homan's sound in just a minute. Stephen Miller saying seeing the judges are breaking the law. And because people aren't, politics wonks like you and I, Felice, most people don't understand or will believe what he's saying because they don't pay attention. They will hear words invaders. They will hear word illegals. They will hear words that, they're not protected under the Constitution. Anybody. That's why the Constitution is very clear in its distinction between citizen and person. Persons are granted rights under the Constitution, whether you're a citizen or not. Being a citizen is different, but as a person here, you are eligible. Similarly with the whole invasion conversation, right? We touched on this a little bit yesterday. When you are able to convince your base and hopefully the judiciary that parents of children born here were part of an invasion, therefore, in their mind, children who are born here do not get citizenship under the birthright citizenship clause of our Constitution. That is so unbelievably disgusting. That's where I want to see courage of the GOP. That's where I want somebody to stand up and say, birthright citizenship is granted to us in the Constitution. You don't get to pick and choose which elements of the Constitution you like and the ones that you don't. You don't get to pick and choose. We all live under it. We're all subjected to it. We're all supposed to abide by it. In fact, our elected officials take a fucking oath to it. So make that make sense. Everybody, please keep tapping and sharing. Let's get Felice above 2,000K, please. And consider subscribing. Again, we're marching towards our giveaway in a little while. We're going to give away some swag. And then Cards Against Humanity is down the road. So do that. Do all that stuff that Eve told you to do.
And it's like this Brown University professor, people are so focused on what happened on those planes, which, that's a disgusting violation. But it also happened again. another federal judge's order was violated with, what's her name? Rasha Alloway. She's a kidney transplant specialist, a professor at Brown University, who, the judge, said, I need advance warning if you're going to deport her, whatever. Like she, basically was deported. I mean, it's another example. They're attacking the elite, intelligent people, but I think everyone needs to recognize this tactic. It was all fun and games. Well, Americans were less affected by it when we were doing it in other countries. That's how the United States enters sovereign territory we have no business in. We declare there's a T group in there and they did something to us. That T group usually happens to be a group of proud people, a lot of them children. Then they start calling those children military age men. Or what? And the next thing you know, we are doing whatever we want. This is how you declare war, go outside of due process, and exterminate people. And Trump is now using that on people inside the U.S.
Which again speaks to the rhetoric that they used during the campaign, saying they were only going to be targeting criminals. They were only focused on people who were violating the law. Well, we've seen that that's not the case. If you have brown skin, you're subject to an illegal search and seizure. I think that's obvious. If you are protesting on a college campus, standing for something, again, the claims that it was pro age group sentiment. No, it was a protest. I mean, our country was founded on protests, and you want to violate someone's rights because you don't like their message. So Tom Homan, I also wanted to chime in on his thoughts on this whole thing, and I'm sure this will be riveting content.
Proclamation took his authority under Alien Enemies Act and imposed it, which he has the right to do. TDA has been designated terrorist organizations. TDA is an enemy of this country. We know TDA, based on a lot of evidence, are part of the Maduro regime through the military and law enforcement. They've infiltrated.
No evidence. Look, none.
They've invaded this country to unsettle this country, whether it's through fentanyl killing thousands of Americans or through the violence they're perpetrating in our cities. The president did the right thing. I stand by it. I thought we removed in one day over 200 dangerous people, including MS-13. It was right there in the street. I see the video that President Bukele put out. It was a beautiful thing. These people are going to be held accountable.
Is every one of those guys a member of the gang? How do you know it? And why can't they sort that out with a lawyer and a hearing?
Look, we abided by the court's decision. His written order was on 5 illegal aliens. They didn't want to deport him, and we abided by that. By the time the other order came, the plane was already over international waters.
So?
Wrong.
With a plane.
No, there was more than one plane. He's lying.
I know he's lying. He's flat out lying.
Insignificant public safety threats, and to turn a plane around over international waters, we're going to refuel over international waters, come back and bring terrorists back to the United States. That's not what this president promised American people. What the president did was exactly the right thing.
So they're all Trinidad, every guy who's on that plane?
I'm not familiar with every single case in that plane, but that's my understanding. MS-13 members and TDA members.
Isn't that your job?
And let's remember,
they had a hearing yesterday where they didn't have any evidence of anything. They had an evidentiary hearing to present their evidence that these were gang members, and shocker, they didn't have any.
He is the actual border czar, Felice. I would like to think that he would know who's on the plane.
I'm just saying, if you're sure, if these are the people you say they are and you know it and you've done a great thing, Trump would plaster that evidence all over the place. He would be like, look what I've done. It would be on billboards. He has nothing. Otherwise, he would show it.
Correct.
Title 8, not through the Alien Enemies Act. So, again, it was the right thing to do. This was the people of this country mandated President Trump deal with the border crisis, deal with illegal immigration, and deal with illegal alien crime. And that's exactly what we did. We removed terrorists. That should be a celebration. We removed terrorists from this country. And I stand by what the president did. I support 100%.
How do you determine whether somebody is a gang member?
Exactly.
What criteria do you use?
To various investigations.
What are they?
A lot of the ways we do it, law enforcement central. I'm not going to share all that with you, but whether through social media, through the activities, through their criminal records here and abroad.
Really?
So this was done a very the review of this issue was at the highest level I've seen, and I think again I stand by everything we did this weekend, and I think the president promised the American people. We removed terrorists from the country this weekend. I can't believe any media would question the president's ability to remove terrorists from this country.
you say? What do you say to those who say you're? What do you say to those who claim you're using a 200-year-old law to circumvent due process?
An old law?
An old law?
Not as old as Constitution. We still pay attention to that, don't we?
Do we?
How many more times do you play?
Wow. Just the fucking gaslight. That's crazy. So
there was an evidentiary hearing yesterday where that's where you bring the evidence to the hearing called the evidentiary hearing. And then you say, here is our evidence. Like he just said, international criminal records and all that. That is when you present all that evidence. They did not present any.
None. The quote for me was when he said, I can't believe any media would question the president's ability to remove terrorists. That is that's an example of gaslighting right there, because all we're asking for is, first of all, show us the crimes they've committed. Why were these people not subjected to due process? And if they are members of a terrorist group, then where's the receipts? And none of that has happened. None of it. None of it. Tom Homan is
not a stitch of evidence. They literally just obfuscated the entire time.
And so when I know Felice says this a lot. So when we play clips for you guys, when you hear the word invasion, that is by design. When you hear them talking about waste, fraud, and abuse, that is by design. When you hear them talking about these terrorist groups, that is by design, right? No, by the way, I've not got my press pass. I've applied again. Somebody just asked, I've applied for press credentials to the White House press room, and I keep getting
Caroline, leave it. I mean, she's letting anybody, the riffraff in now.
I know. That's kind of my hope. If they're going to let riffraff in, then maybe I can get in. But anyway, it's just, to me, it's the constant pressure and misinformation that they're spewing to the electorate because they're hiding other things. We know that. It's all part of the distraction. But this is just so, again, back to courage. Where are people who believe in the Constitution, who are conservative? Where are those people that are standing up saying, we are violating people's rights here? The party of rights and freedom, the party of due process, the party of legitimate, of the separations of powers. Where are they? Why are they not stepping up? And to your point, to me, it's just about power. They follow the money. They know that they'll get primaried. They know that they'll likely lose their seats. So they're just going to continue to ignore this just blatant assault on our Constitution.
Well, it's a similar, they're normalizing it within themselves, right? Like, that's what I want to say. What just happened this weekend is such a egregious violation of all of our rights, of all of our future rights. And of course, Trump is saying, these were criminals. These were gang members. They were part of what I'm declaring as a T group. They were invading America because if he can normalize this, if he can get away with this, then the next is journalists he doesn't like. The next is Liz Cheney. Like, that's what he's trying to do. This is a normalization process, like moving us towards fascism where we just accept, well, okay, if it's just when it's terrorists, you know what I mean? If it's just theists, then it's fine, right? Like, that's okay. I can logically handle that. But the point is, there is no evidence. And the only thing we should protect in America is the fact any of us, if we're accused of something, someone should have to bring evidence.
So I was waiting for the Truth Social post on this, and we have it. This radical, I got to do the voice, sorry. Wow.
This radical left lunatic of a judge, a troublemaker, an agitator who was sadly appointed by Barack Hussein Obama, was not elected president. I was. He didn't win the popular vote by a lot. He didn't win all 7 swing states. He didn't win 2,750 to 525 counties. He didn't win anything. I won for many reasons, an overwhelming mandate, but fighting illegal immigration may have been the #1 reason for this historic victory. I'm just doing what the voters wanted me to do. This judge, like many of the crooked judges I am forced to appear before, should be impeached. We don't want vicious, violent, and demented criminals, many of them deranged unalivers in our country. Make America great again. Whatever.
That's the whole point. And this is MAGA, I challenge you to use your brain.
Unreal.
I challenge you to think about what's happening here. Don't listen to the words that he's saying. What is the actual evidence? Is this a precedent you want to set in America? And the answer is no.
And then, like you said earlier, since they've released the names of these judges, it's public information, but you connect the name and their location and their picture to this hateful rhetoric. And I would imagine, I would not be surprised if there were threats made against these judges' lives.
Oh, there absolutely are. I mean, that's what's being said.
Yep. Here's another post from True Social. This is more about the radical left. After years of being held captive by environmental extremists, lunatics, radicals, and thugs, allowing other countries, in particular China, to gain tremendous economic advantage over us by opening up hundreds of all coal-fired power plants, I am authorizing my administration to immediately begin producing energy with beautiful, clean coal. So that to me sounds like he wants to socialize the energy industry in our country, Felice. I don't know about you, but what the fuck is clean coal? That's what I want to know.
He's been saying that. I love him. God, he's so weird. Like, how old is Trump, and is his brain okay? What the F is clean coal? Like, I love that, though. I mean, he's gutting the EPA. Like, that is what he's doing. And this is the most interesting thing. Part of those docs that came out from that Putin think tank that the Europol got a hold of and everything. I mean, Trump is literally gutting our country from within. He's taking away clean water, clean air. Like, this is exactly what Putin wants. It is what he is literally destabilizing our country and our ability to thrive from within, to have long-term success.
Yep, agreed. Everybody, please keep tapping and sharing. Why is Felice not over 2,000 coins? Let's get that done, friends. The other part of this is we're speaking on courage. I do want to play this sound from Adam Kinzinger because I think it speaks to what we discussed a little bit yesterday about how the Trump administration attempting to void the pardons that were issued by President Biden. The language regarding pardons and commutations is very broad. They're talking about this auto pen, and the Department of Justice even said, even if it's an auto pen, it doesn't matter. It's still valid. So an attempt to kind of just remove these pardons. Adam Kinzinger, I think he declined to accept the pardon, but he was a member of the J6 committee, as we all know. So he was interviewed, and this is what he had to say about it. He's like, whatever, basically.
Pardon, it was preemptive.
Here we go.
You didn't ask for a pardon. It was preemptive just in case Trump's Justice Department goes after you and other members of the January 6th committee. What was your reaction when you saw Trump's post last night declaring your preemptive pardon void and vacant?
Well, first off, I'm trying to figure out what he's trying to distract from, because that's what all this is, always a distraction to try to get people's attention, or maybe he hasn't felt like he's got enough attention. But look, Jake, it's like, bring it on. We made it very clear what happened on January 6th. America made a decision. There is one person that's obsessed about the 6th because he still has been basically deemed guilty in the court of public opinion, and that's Donald Trump, and he can't handle it. He obsesses about it. So my reaction to him is like, you know what? Then bring it. Like, stop talking about it. Stop being all verbose. Stop pretending like you're tough. Bring the charges then if you really want to do it, because we will crush you in court and it'll make me 3 times more effective against you.
That's the energy that I like. And he's right? It's just like, bring it. Go ahead. It's part of these threats. And I talk about this often. It's the distraction, right? And Kinzinger nails it. It's like, what are they attempting to distract us from now? I think it's part of what he's going to do in his negotiations with Putin when they are supposedly going to meet today. What other behind closed doors conversations are going to happen? Are they going to kick more aides out of the room? Is he going to speak in glowing terms of Vladimir Putin again, like he did in Helsinki a few years ago? And he said, I have no reason not to believe Vladimir Putin. I'm going to believe him, the lying liar, KGB thug assassin, over my own intelligence services. So,
or like, I mean, it's almost to distract also from removing people from the country with no due process. Like, this is an important precedent to set. Like, if he can somehow get away with this without the country, like, if Americans were smart, they would be in the streets demanding those people be sent back from El Salvador for all of our safety, all of our continued safety and rights in this country. And I think he is trying to distract from that. But also, I think it's a combination of both. I think sometimes Trump, just in my experience being raised by a malignant narcissist, sometimes they just lose control. You know, they're infants, and Trump posted that at almost 1 a.m. Eastern time, and then watching them have to backtrack and come up with something so he doesn't just sound insane. There are videos of Biden saying, "This is why I pardon these people." There are literal, he did sign some of the pardons, and then the copies were signed with an auto pen. None of that makes sense. So watching them say, if you watch as the lie progressed throughout the day, Caroline Leavitt, at the presser yesterday morning, was like, well, Trump was just starting a larger conversation. He was begging the question. Trump doesn't know what begging the question is, about pardons. You mean Trump's pay for pardon schemes? Does he want to examine that? It's just all bullshit. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. When Trump, don't listen to a word narcissists say, just watch what they do, because so much comes out of their mouth. Someone said, you have to ignore narcissists. It's like Trump's late night posts are just Trump. Did you see what he was yelling about the Atlantic yesterday? He's not well. He's a very angry man.
He's a very angry, unwell man. No doubt about it. Rainey, good morning. How are you today?
Oh, God. I didn't mean to press that. I'm sorry. Good morning.
That's okay.
Love you guys.
Do you want me to drop you down?
Yeah.
You got it. Thank you. Have a good day.
Love you too.
You got the message. You got the note. Okay. My name is Danger. Are the wars over yet? Really? Seriously? I know, Linda, you're right. No, there seems like they're just beginning. Threats against Iran now. We all know his plans to kind of, annex Canada, take over Panama. The vote was recently in Greenland, and they all decided that they don't want to be part of the United States, and why would they? I'll bring up Rollo. It's good to see him. Haven't seen him in a while. Good morning, friend. How are you today? It's been a minute.
I am doing.
Same. That's what we all say these days. What's on your mind, sir? The obvious, I would imagine.
I just wanted to come up and thank you and Felice for speaking thoroughly, and that's so awesome about this issue. It is interesting how much misinformation and disinformation there's out there about what's going on with the whole immigration world, and specifically, the atrocities are happening right now, not only to the people that were sent to El Salvador, but also to our due process, right? As this should be a unifying cry for all the U.S. people who claim to be patriots, that if someone's due process rights are so easily trampled, then we are next, right?
Exactly.
Even in the Hispanic community, they're like, well, they're Tren de Aragua. They can be sent anywhere. And I'm like, you don't understand. Right now, they're claiming that they are suspected to be Tren de Aragua, right? But tomorrow is going to be the Mexican community, because all they have to say is they're part of the cartels. And then all Mexicans are suspected and can be investigated for being part of that organization. And then it's going to be MS 13 with Central Americans. They're just going to come after everyone, and none of us are safe, because all they have to do is suspect you, not present any evidence. Like Felice was saying, the evidence you're hearing, nothing was presented, and everyone just kind of goes off the word of horrible people like Tom Holman, who goes up there and lies, who's lied so many times before. I've been so stressed out about this, because it affects everyone, and especially, the people that I help. So I just wanted to come up and thank you all.
Well, Rolla, I thank you for the work that you're doing. And I think you said something that's really important. Obviously, we know that there will be targeted attacks against your community and the BIPOC community in general, just from a racial profiling perspective. But the language they've used about illegal protests on college campuses it could be anybody. I mean, it literally could be any. They've identified the radical leftists, right? So it could be anyone. And so to your point, none of us are safe. Obviously, my privilege makes me a lot safer than the two of you, for sure. But I'm considered a radical leftist who speaks out against the government, who would go to a protest on a college campus, or would stand with a sign saying, let's punch Nazis in the face, all that kind of stuff. F1 in the chat. Sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Anyway, that's the point. Yeah. This is where we are now. This is where we're at. No one is safe.
Can I point out that nobody is safe, even if you're here as a U.S. citizen? Because Tom Holman has cited to 8 U.S.C. 1324, I believe it is, which is like the aiding and abetting undocumented people. And a lot of states are trying to pass laws that mirror 8 U.S.C. 1324, including Idaho. They try to pass HB 335, which basically made it illegal and made it a felony for people to, amongst many other things, provide legal advice to undocumented people. That would make me a felon overnight, an attorney, and then the rest of the immigration attorneys, public defenders, I have to ask, for legal purposes, if they're here undocumented, so that they can provide, a legal advice before making any pleadings. That is Supreme Court case law. You have to ask in order to properly advise. So Idaho and Tennessee and all these
they're doing the same thing to women in those states, right? To try to stop people from giving women advice about healthcare. They're trying to do the same thing to doctors.
Exactly. So this administration has already said that they're coming after even U.S. citizens. We saw Florida, if you transport person who is suspected of being undocumented, that's a felony. They try to do the same thing here in Idaho. So none of us are safe. Nope. None of us are safe, and they should be a unifying cry, in my opinion.
I would agree. I'll just read this really quickly, and I'll just, because it's kind of personal. I think it's kind of funny. So we all know Mark Levin, right wing creator, right wing talk show host, who's a freaking whack job. And we talk, and we can joke about what I'm about to read, but this speaks to what we were just discussing, how no one is potentially safe because of the label that the fascists in our government want to put on everybody. Mark Levin writes, "Give Vermont to Canada. Instead of trying to make Canada our 51st state, which would result in 2 more Democrat senators and who knows how many Democrat congressmen, and make millions of libs American citizens, I suggest we give Canada Vermont so we can get rid of Bernie Sanders and the other Marxist political hacks who run the state. We could make sure that conservatives in Vermont retain their American citizenship. The libs, not so much. They're more Canadian than American anyway." So, listen, I know that the syrup quality in Canada would certainly elevate if Vermont went to Canada. But I think the point is, and I say this in jest, but the point is they're identifying enemies of the state is what they're doing, right? And then anybody who speaks out against this government, press agencies being deemed illegal, members of the journalist community challenging or questioning or losing their press credentials. This is fascism. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, that's right. And we saw what they did to Khalil, right?
Yeah.
A legal permanent resident.
Correct.
Claiming that his LPR status can be revoked.
Correct.
And if you guys know that you have only a judge can revoke your LPR status. Now they can detain you, they can do all these things, but ultimately you have the right to defend your status. It's called a 42A, cancellation of removal for legal permanent residence. So even if you are being, if you have been found guilty, because you have to be found guilty or have pled guilty to a crime of moral turpitude or an aggravated felony, or, there might be a few other things there, then you can be placed in removal proceedings for a judge to decide whether you can, keep your legal permanent residency. And then you have a defense to removal, which is 42A. But this guy is just being held indefinitely. No charges have been placed against him.
None.
there's allegations and suspicion, right, that he supports the H group. But again,
there's no
they
language
said they were
there.
coming after undocumented people and criminal undocumented people. That's not the case.
So, Rollo, arrest requires RAS, right? Reasonable articulable suspicion, whatever that might be, right? So in our system, and
it provides probable cause. It's a higher standard.
Okay, probable cause, right? Okay, so I don't think there's any of us that would disagree that if you identify someone who has a criminal record or whatever that might be, as long as they are given due process and thus deported, I don't think any of us would have a problem with that. I don't think anybody would. The issue
it's been happening for decades, yeah.
Exactly. The issue is that people's constitutional rights are just being violated on a whim, and the justification that they're using is this rhetoric: invaders, 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 in an attempt to justify, in an attempt to use the Alien Enemies Act, the Alien Enemies Act, the Insurrection Act, violation of due process. I mean, it's just. And back to our topic for today: is there going to be anybody? The conservative law and order party that we've always been told, is there going to be anybody that's going to stand up? Is there anyone with any courage that can say enough's enough?
Yeah, and just to be clear and distinguish between an arrest and a detention, when it comes to ICE detentions, they don't need probable cause. They just need to know that this person is deportable and can be detained and is here unlawfully. So due process is really low because according to them, you're not depriving them of life, liberty, or property, right? You are detaining them, and it's not really imprisoning them. It's a detainer. And because you don't have the right to be of citizenship, right? So they can detain you and then put you in removal proceedings, etc. The problem again is that a lot of these people that were detained have done things correctly. They have presented themselves at the border, applied for asylum. A lot of them have pending court cases. Yeah, they have pending court cases, meaning that you haven't been order removed by an immigration judge, right? So, and they're just taking away as much due process. I don't want to take too much of the time, but I have to point out that
please do.
Under many organizations, I think it started under Bush. I'm not exactly sure. Don't quote me on that.
I love you taking up my time, Rolla. I love talking to immigration attorneys.
Agreed.
Thank you for the information.
I agree.
Thank you. No, so there was this thing called expedited removals, right? Expedited removals were people that can be removed without seeing an immigration judge, kind of like an administrative removal. But in order to be subject to an expedited removal, you have to have been in the country for less than 15 days and within 100 nautical air miles of the border, any border, circumferencing the U.S., right? When Trump
you live in a border state, you know where that is, that mark is, because they have literal checkpoints set up to keep people within that 100-mile mark.
Exactly. Yes. Now, when Trump came in, he moves the goalpost, right? So he says, well, now, if to be subject to expedited removal, we're going to bump it up to 2 years. So if you've been here for 2 years or less, and anywhere in the United States, we can grab you and we can exercise an expedited removal, regardless if you have a court date coming up, regardless if you have a work permit, driver's license, if you filed your I-589, if you presented yourself at the border, and even if you entered through CBP-1, which is a legal, organized way to coming in at the port of entry and then being processed and being let in. So people who had the CBP, who did everything right, are being snatched up just because the definition of expedited removal was changed, right? So right now you have a huge net of who qualifies to just be kicked out of the country without due process. So I've been yelling from the top of my lungs on this app that Trump just wants to deport as many brown people as possible, as fast as possible, without due process.
Correct.
because that's what they're doing. And I have many examples of how that's being done.
So, so when I talk about how I mentioned this earlier, and I'm just curious your thoughts about this. When he uses words like invasion, and when Tom Homan uses words like invasion, and we hear it on right wing media, they're just spewing it. I think it's by design, because if you can create this theory when you talk to the Supreme Court about ending birthright citizenship, you can make the claim that, hey, the parents of this kid who was born here and is now his citizenship were invaders. Therefore, the justification for granting birthright citizenship is null and void. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. The first time he ever said we're being invaded, I had red flags coming up, because that's exactly right. Now we're no longer human. We're no longer asylum seekers. We're no longer people, right? We're invaders. And as long as you can classify us in anything other than a person crossing the border, and take away that designation of people and persons that the Constitution protects, now we're no longer that. Now we can be classified as invaders, criminals, alien, all these words that are used to make us subhuman, but also legally change the designation so that they can fit within, their atrocious plans that are happening right now. So, yeah, that's exactly right. If we're invaders or parts of T groups, right? Like they're trying to claim right now. You guys just played the clip on Tom Homan.
Yeah.
And they're like, why isn't everybody celebrating that we removed hundreds of T people?
Exactly.
And that works. That works for all the MAGAs.
Sure does.
Who say, yeah, we got to get them all out, because they're all T groups from Tren de Aragua.
Correct.
You're like, how do we know that? There was no due process. I mean, you guys already talked about it, so I don't want to rehash it, but that's exactly it. And that's exactly how they're so proficient at pushing this narrative that for 10 years, I mean, look, I am not surprised with what's happening and the sentiment of all the MAGAs and racist people, right, that support this crap. Because we have been being conditioned and groomed for 10 years. 1 minute and 45 seconds from the time that Donald Trump came out those fake golden escalators, he called all of us rapists, criminals, and hug mules, right?
Correct.
And then that hasn't stopped. That narrative has never stopped. 10 years later, the American people are already conditioned through the multiple lies, constant lies, and constant dehumanization of immigrants. And now they're doing this, and nobody's batting an eye that should be batting an eye.
Yeah, I agree.
That's crazy. Sorry.
I was just looking. Well, I was just sorry. I'm just passionate about this. I just want to say, I'm like looking in the Washington Post, and there's many examples you can find. But if anyone's interested in looking this up in the immigration section, actually, I think it's on the front page. It says it's an article entitled "For 4 Venezuelan Friends, the Alien Enemies Act Cuts Short an American Dream." Right? These are 4 of the people that their families had no idea what happened to them, and they caught a glimpse of them on that Bukele torture video, torture corn video. And these are people who, like you're saying, surrendered, used the app, made an appointment, surrendered to immigration, received a court date, and were released. Right? I mean, these are 4 Venezuelan friends. These are the people who are in that video. And it's interesting to me because one of their mothers is saying, hey, if you're after criminals, go get criminals, but not these kids have no criminal record. That's what she's saying. She's like, they have no criminal record. They've done nothing wrong. That's why they were released into the country, when Border Patrol looked into them. They've never been in a gang. But if you're looking for criminals, go get criminals. And this is how I honestly think, especially with the Hispanic community, which I think we're going to learn the hard way, because I come from an indigenous Mexican family where I have a lot of family members that literally voted to lose their birthright citizenship, voted for and are going to lose their own citizenship, or keep having these attitudes like it's the criminals. Like I have a family member who's literally said to me a couple weeks ago, Yeah, but we don't want this to be like Mexico. We don't want the crime. That's why we came here, was to escape the crime. And I had to lovingly say, hey, the number one driver of crime is what? Poverty, right?
Exactly.
You escaped poverty. That's why there was crime in Mexico, not because, oh God, the other Mexicans might follow us here. It's like, I'm fascinated by these attitudes in the Hispanic community of, well, it's not us. Or, okay, just get the criminals. Like, it's almost like, and I'm speaking from my own family's perspective, I think they're in disbelief almost, and they still want to believe, oh, well, they're going after criminals and they're making mistakes. But the point is not that. It's to set a precedent that whoever they point at, starting with brown and black people first, but eventually it will be professors, it will be whoever, it will be journalists, it will be whoever dissents against Trump. You just point at them and say, that person's involved in some sort of criminal activity or gang activity or T group activity, and they're disappeared.
One of my mods transcribes the video that we were just talking about from Trump. People in our country, this is from him, people in our country illegally can self-deport the easy way, or they can get deported the hard way, and that's not pleasant. The Biden administration exploited the CB1 app to allow more than 1 million aliens to illegally enter the United States. Now, my administration is launching the CBP Home app to give people in our country illegally an easy way to leave now and self-deport voluntarily. If they do, they could potentially have the opportunity to return legally, at some point in the future. But if they do not avail themselves of this opportunity, then they will be found, they will be deported, and they will never be admitted again to the United States ever again. You're never coming in. Using the CBP Home app to leave the United States voluntarily is the safest option for illegal aliens and our law enforcement. It also saves U.S. taxpayer dollars and valuable CBP and ICE resources. And all of those resources are necessary to focus on dangerous criminal aliens, and that's what we're focused on. The CBP Home app is now available free across all mobile app stores, and I encourage those who have violated our laws to use this option today. Do it right and come back into our country. Do it wrong, and you'll never be back again.
I can point out so many lies on that, because obviously this orange Jesus has never read, immigration law.
No.
If you
has never read.
Yeah, exactly. Hop on pop. Yeah.
I overspoke. No. So, no, you can leave. And then if you have acquired unlawful presence, you need to stay 10 years out, and then you can come back. Now, if you entered multiple times, the current law gives you a permanent bar. Right. But that has something to do with the CBP. Like, the CBP app is not going to magically make you eligible to come back here legally. It's so stupid.
Exactly. So to me, it's more data gathering, invasion of privacy, justification for mass roundups. Rollo, I always appreciate talking to you. I always feel smarter after you join our panel. Anything else you'd like to share? Any reminders, any suggestions, anything else that you feel like you want to get out there in the public space?
Just anyone who's in fear right now, please understand your constitutional rights. Don't let these bullies bully you, right? Seek information from credible sources like the ACLU. They have a whole thing on what your constitutional rights are as a non-immigrant, as a non-citizen. And be careful, right? Be careful. Nobody's safe, but we still have to fight. We still have to keep going. So thank you for having me up.
As always, my friend. Thank you very much. We love you, Rollo. See you later, buddy.
All right. Love you guys.
Love
Bye,
you.
Felice.
I know we need to see each other. It's been too long. Love him.
I know. So somebody just mentioned to me that the Dow has opened down. Let's check on that. Yes, indeed. The Dow has opened down 189 points. Remember, it's down 58 points for the week. It's down 2,730 points for the month. And over the last year, because it was breaking records under the Joe Biden administration, over the last year, it's up 2,850 points. So there you go.
But it's pretty much lost everything since Trump got into office.
Yeah. And there's reporting about, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all I was going to say. Any gains made since Trump was in office have been lost.
And there's talk about Tesla stock crashing so much that there may be a margin call issued against Elon that he's not in a position to pay. So Interesting.
I mean, this is the time for a bear hug or whatever they call it. They need to force him out, like whatever power. I mean, does he own 51%? Like they might not be able to get rid of him.
Yeah.
But now would be the time. Like people are probably like, what the, because I don't see this ending for him.
I want to tap into your love of late stage capitalism, Felice. Said no one ever. But I talked about this the other day about how, do you think Trump wants a recession?
Yeah, I do. Like, I think, I think there's short-term and long-term goals. Like, and I say this all the time, like my mind just works in patterns. The way I keep myself safe is I identify patterns. When the patterns change, you know what I mean? Then I know something is changing. In my opinion, and I've talked about this a lot of my life, Trump is, in the short term, he's causing dips in the market. Somebody's shorting the market, right? Like his Putin, whoever. Also, when he's driving American stocks down, watch the Russian markets. He's making Putin a lot of money. Exactly. I don't know when. And driving America into recession, making us weaker, in my opinion, does help Trump. Right? We're talking about uber wealthy people who can weather whatever, right? Buy low, sell high. Like who benefits from recessions? Capitalists, right? That's when huge transfers of wealth happen and move to the top of the economy. When we default on our loans, when we default on our mortgages, when we lose, they snap up all of our assets at a low price. I mean, I don't see how he couldn't benefit from it in some ways. And like the final thing I want to say is, you know, people are always, like you mentioned Andy Ogles, and Andy Ogles does a lot of crazy things, but you know, he introduced that amendment to like Trump should be able to stay in office or whatever. Yeah. And people are like, that will never happen. Like it takes 3/4 of the state legislatures. Yeah, that's not what I'm worried about though. Right. I mean, we literally watch Israel's like little, you know, it's like a little monster we created and fucking terrorizing people. And I mean, yeah, it force us into a recession, create enemies, and then have one of your enemies who you might also be working for, start a war with us so you don't leave office, right? So you can declare martial law. That's the other reason you keep hearing invasion, state of emergency. When Trump declares these states of emergency, energy emergency, environmental emergency, all these states of emergencies, it gives him special powers. Right. And in my opinion, if Trump's going to make a big move, he's not going to try to amend the Constitution. I think that's a bridge too far. It will be him creating a wartime situation, and just like Netanyahu, refusing to leave.
We talked about this a little bit yesterday about this new category of the super billionaires. They're called the centabillionaires. They're those that have net assets and worth over $100 billion. There's like 19. So a very exclusive group. And I agree with you that I do think it's by design, because as we saw from the most recent crash from 2008, 2009, the financial crisis, that's when we really started to see the accelerated growth in wealth and income disparity, when the gap got wider and wider and wider, because that billionaire class who owns a good chunk of our assets are able to buy low and then enrich themselves, right? They constantly use their own portfolios to leverage to acquire more wealth. It's not like they're walking around with cash. They don't operate that way. Everything is leveraged, right? So I think it is by design. And I think sadly what we're going to see is, again, what little wealth the rest of us had, whether it be through 401ks or pensions or whatever it might be, will be gone, which would require even more dependency on so many for Social Security, right? Medicaid, Medicare. These programs are getting cut. So it's hard to look at this any way other than the cruelty is the point. It's really hard to look at it otherwise. Because how
much more dependent are we, right? If we lose everything, if he forces us into a recession, we depend more on capitalism, more on our jobs, more on corporations to sustain us. I mean, yeah, it's about creating more dependency.
Right. They don't want, exactly, somebody just said this, they don't want us to own anything. They want to own everything. So there are guesstimates that the super billionaire class own roughly 2% of our country. I don't know. The only place I've seen reported on that is Forbes. So I don't know exactly what the criteria is, but they're predicting that if the market does crash like they expect it to do, that 2% goes to 4%. So it depends on how deep we go. The stock market has always been a sound investment. We've seen stock growth. We see it all the time. It's always been a sound investment. You're in it for the long term, but people losing everything. And like you just said, we become more dependent on our jobs. We become more part of the slave labor machine. We become more, pawns in this game. And whether it be the Luigi moment or other moments, I think I hope, at least I know we talk about it a lot. I know you talk about it all the time about the enemy is not the person to the right or left of us. The enemy are the people above us who've keeping their foot on our neck.
I think it was Albie in the chat said feudalism, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
There's a one of my favorite books is, I can't even remember who writes it, but it's called The End of Capitalism. It's about techno-feudalism, right? I mean, that is essentially Trump is surrounding himself with technocrats. This is not something new, right? This is what Elmo's granddaddy tried to do a long time ago.
Yeah.
They tried it once.
That's exactly right. And then, obviously then the assault on education and the assault on, just the societal infrastructure that supports the marginalized communities amongst us. This is one of those scenarios where everyone gets harmed. There's reporting now about the impact of tariffs predominantly affecting border states just because it makes sense. So states like California, Arizona, Texas, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, the upper Midwest, the states that are going to be harmed the most. Trump voters in a lot of those communities, the impact on rural farmers, all these kinds of things that are going to cause these family farms to go out of business, or small businesses that are selling Trump merch that they get in China, whatever that might be. So the harm is spread across all of us, right? And again, back to the topic today, where is the courage going to come from? Does it still exist?
I could not agree more. Toodle in the chat said Peter Thiel, which I invite everyone, like, if you think Elmo's a scary person, you need to read Peter Thiel's essays. I mean, yeah. If you understand what he wants is to cause recessions, huge transfers of wealth to the top of the economy. He sees all of us, the middle and lower class, as free range cattle. I'm not telling you that he sees us as cattle that either serve we're slave laborers, and he would like to put chips in us or ankle bracelets, as I think he says, and we're just free. We're all prisoners, right? That work for the rich, for the technocrats, as long as we're useful, and then we can roam around, right? It's like an open air prison, not like Palestine. That is literally Peter Thiel's dream for the future.
Indeed. Hi, Victoria. You said you wanted to talk about Tennessee.
No, I only have a couple of minutes. I was actually going to drop so that I could, go to an appointment. But I wanted to say, one, Felice, thank you for bringing up the socioeconomic issues with immigration, because, I think that it's really important to remind people that most crime only happens because of socioeconomic issues. We see this across the board. But I wanted to talk about, or poverty, for those in the chat who don't like socioeconomic. But Tennessee has 3 laws right now, 2 of which are being voted on. And we talk about this a lot, about how these laws are passed in red states and then they kind of spread across the country. So Tennessee has the law that went through the Finance Committee that basically makes it a Class E felony for you to vote against Trump's immigration policy as a legislator. So this would eliminate people's ability to have sanctuary cities here in Tennessee. And let's be very clear here. There are progressives here in Tennessee. I am one of them. We have progressive cities. We have Memphis, we have Chattanooga, we have Nashville, and we have Knoxville. So this eliminates individual governments from being able to create safe spaces. And let's be my district, one of my counties in my district has a 40% immigrant population. To the point that we ran Spanish ads in that district because we realized that we needed to cater to the fact that it wasn't just English speaking people there. They have 2 other laws that are on the books, and I think they're being voted on this week, so don't quote me on it. But one is, we're calling it the Anne Frank bill. And basically it makes it illegal for you to knowingly or unknowingly house anyone who might be an immigrant and not be a citizen. So that's on the books. And let's be very clear here.
Rollo was talking about that, even in regards to like legal aid, right? Sheltering as well. Yep.
And then the other one that comes into is now they can deny in school districts. They're trying to pass this that you can deny people based on their immigration status. So children can be denied based on their immigration status. These are 3 laws in Tennessee, 2 of which are being voted on. Make that shit make sense. So,
Isn't Andy Ogles from Tennessee? He's from Tennessee, isn't he?
Yeah, he's in District 5 next to my district. I don't know who's going to run against him, but we need someone to run against him. But I got to hop down. I love you guys. I hope you have a lovely day.
You
Bye.
too. See you later. Bye. Again, we discuss these things because, Felice knows this. The mainstream media has not, even after 10 years, has not figured out how to cover Trump. They just don't know how to cover him. They feel like they have to bend the knee themselves. They're going to lose their press credentials. Well, you're going to lose your press credentials anyway because he thinks you're illegal. He thinks that when you're reporting on the news that he doesn't like, he thinks that, that it's illegal. So I found
that's why we had to get away from for-profit media. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like when billionaires are owning these when rich people are owning media companies, then it seems like journalists aren't free to do what they need to do. That's why I suggest ProPublica. I love ProPublica because those are a lot of former Pulitzer Prize winning New York Times journalists now working at a, nonprofit. I love independent journalism, and that's why, Jim Acosta is so much better now that he's free to say everything he thinks. Everyone get on Substack.
So as we know, and I've talked about this publicly here about how I believe that we should be overfunding public education. I think our teachers should be highly sought after. I think they should be recruited from Maine to Alaska. I think the profession needs to be treated with the respect that it deserves and that it's earned. Well, we know that the GOP and the current administration doesn't agree. We know that education standards are lower. I shouldn't say lower, or I should say education outcomes and results are significantly lower by and large in red states. Well, I found this from Agenda 47, some of the videos that he used to post, and his solution for higher education. This is scary.
Announcing today, we will take the billions and billions of dollars that we will collect by taxing, fining, and suing excessively large private university endowments, and we will then use that money to endow a new institution called the American Academy. Its mission will be to make a truly world-class education available to every American, free of charge, and do it without adding a single dime to the federal debt. This institution will gather an entire universe of the highest quality educational content covering the full spectrum of human knowledge and skills, and make that material available to every American citizen online for free. Whether you want lectures or ancient histories or an introduction to financial accounting or training in a skilled trade, the goal will be to deliver it and get it done properly. Using study groups, mentors, industry partnerships, and the latest breakthrough in computing, this will be a truly top-tier education option for the people. It will be strictly non-political, and there will be no wokeness or jihadism allowed. None of that's going to be allowed. Most importantly, the American Academy will compete directly with the existing and very costly four-year university system by granting students degree credentials that the U.S. government and all federal contractors will henceforth recognize.
That sounds legit, Felice.
Almost like that's happened before. It's like Trump University take 10.
Yep. And again, somebody just said that. Use the trigger words, right? Saying that this university will be apolitical, no politics, but it's not going to be woke. It's not going to be radical. And it's not accredited, by the way. And people will sign up. People will sign up. Remember, Trump University was a fraud. And by the way, just a little bit of revisionist history here. Pam Bondi was the attorney general in the state of Florida. Pam Bondi was part of the lawsuit against Trump University. Then there was this random meeting, and Pam Bondi got a $25,000 campaign donation to run for re-election. And all of a sudden, that lawsuit just went away. Poof.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? When Trump was at the DOJ with Pam Bondi waving around a brick of yayo, that what she says is fake. Do you remember? You know what's funny? One of the people he was threatening, or one of the groups, the think tank nonprofits, was CREW, the Citizens for Renewed Ethics in Washington, you know, which is like Noah Bookbinder and Norm Eason, who are geniuses. They're the ones that did the FOIA requests that caught Pam Bondi and Trump in that. You know, like and then Trump was threatening them on Friday saying, I'm going to come after you. You guys are criminals. It was that they're the ones that found out that Pam Bondi and Trump had that meeting.
So I just a reminder to folks that your higher education is in good hands with the institution, the American Academy, because of course the Trump administration is looking out for the minds of our youth. Maybe later. How are you today? Maybe later. Are you there? Maybe later. 564. Are you there? I guess not. Okay. We'll bring up Moth. Everybody, please continue to tap and share the live. Why is Felice only at 2.5? Let's see that number.
Get to
over
300K. Tapping is clapping.
Let's get her done.
I guess they didn't mean to join until maybe later.
I was going to say that.
Try the veal here all week. How are you, sir? What's going on?
You. I'm doing all right. You don't have to call me sir. You can just... I don't know what I want to be called. I'm just... Because I'm not identifying as either one anymore. I'm just Moth.
I'll call you Moth, my awesome friend. How about that?
That works. Did you appreciate what I got in the mail yesterday? Or the day before? I don't remember which day it was. So did you appreciate what I got in the mail the other day?
Yep, it's one of a kind, Moth, and it's going to stay that way.
I showed it to my fiance, and he just shook his head at me and said, "Only you would wear something like that." And I was like, "You're damn right," and I am the only one wearing something like that because nobody else is getting one.
That's right. Well, not according to Erica, but we'll leave that conversation for another day. What you got for us today, friend?
Oh, I was just coming up here. I was going to say hello to you and to the lovely Felice. I hope you're both doing well. And I was going to come up here and say that we need to be tapping and sharing the live. We need to be tapping that screen. We haven't announced any winners yet, have we?
No, I think you guys are going to do that in the mod chat or wherever that room is, and then I'll announce it.
Yeah. One of the rooms. There's many.
Yeah.
We have many
rooms. There's many rooms. But yeah, so coming up, so there's still time. I guess we'll go to 10:30. There's still time for people to subscribe. If you haven't yet, please subscribe at factsdon'tmatter.site. You can also find the link in the link tree that's in my bio. It's called the Facts HQ. Please consider doing that. And yeah, I think it's going to be in the announcements channel. So if you're in our Discord and you want to watch the fun and the chaos, please consider over there. Winner will get a choice of either merch item, any merch item from the merch store, and or a comparable charitable donation but at a minimum of $50. And I will pay that on your behalf because that's what we do around here. So thank you for that reminder.
And the cutoff for that was yesterday, correct? To get subscribed.
Yeah, but we're being kind and generous. I mean, I'll leave it up to Eve. She'll tell me if I did something wrong, which I usually do.
Yeah, so go to factsdon'tmatter.site and subscribe there. You can still subscribe through the app here, but we would prefer that you subscribe through the website, just because we never know what's going to happen with TikTok. And also, if you subscribe through the website, you have the option for an annual subscription, which is a little bit of a discount there. And I don't know about y'all, but if there's an option for an annual subscription with something, I'm all about it.
Me too.
Because I don't have to worry about it every month. I just have to worry about, that one time a year where all of my annual subscriptions come due at the same time, it seems.
That's right. I agree.
I seem to just have fantastic timing with that.
Well, Moth, I thank you, and I'm sure you're going to wear that shirt proudly. So we're going to have to wait for another time when you can display it. Maybe it's on Facts After Dark, but we'll talk about that at a different time. But thank you, friend. I love you very much.
Love you too. Have a good day, Felice.
Nice to meet you. Oh, okay. I mean, we've met. Have a great day. That's what I meant. I was like, wait a minute. I know you.
Okay. I wanted
Can I say something really quick?
Please. Sorry. Go ahead.
New
Yes.
York. Well, I'm not gonna. I don't need to read it. I sent everyone in my Discord a gift article to the New York Times. Guess what just came out? One of my new favorite things. Like I showed everyone. If you don't know Doge.muskwatch.com, there's this independent journalist who made this amazing tool where he's auditing Doge. So it's like Elmo's claims of fraud are like at 105 billion. The real number is 8 billion. And the New York Times, and Washington Post, they're having forensic auditors continue to audit Doge. Elmo is trying to make it harder for people now to connect the contracts and the claims. But forensic auditors are forensic auditors. So another article just came out in the New York Times. Doge makes it harder, or its latest errors harder to find. But the Times was still able to detect another batch of mistakes. I love that Elmo just keeps getting called out. That whole site is just a pack of lies.
Yeah, Elmo, Felice.
Elmo is Elon. If you don't know, like if you hang out on X, which I don't recommend for your mental health, but I do because I got to keep an eye on these people. And we call him Elmo because he misspells his own name all the time. And he types Elmo. So everyone just calls him Elmo.
I love it. Or Leon, that Trump called him at one point. He called him Leon. Traveling Trav, how are you today?
The site is doge.muskwatch.com. It's the coolest tool. It's free right now. Doge.muskwatch.com.
There you go. Hello, Traveling Trav. How are you today? Oh, he left. Okay. All right. So we talked earlier briefly about now they're starting to really look at the breakdown by state as to which states are going to be harmed the most by some of the tariffs, and we know it's going to affect the entire country, but some states are going to get hit a lot harder. This is reporting from Newsweek that came out over the weekend. So Trump has substantially, understatement, reoriented American trade policy, imposing major new tariffs on some of the United States' biggest trading partners, including close allies, with promises of more to come. Many of the countries targeted have hit back with their own counter tariffs. Some economists arguing global trade war could push the U.S. economy into a recession. We talked about that earlier. However, while every American state will be affected in some way, some will most certainly be worse off than others. Trade experts told Newsweek the impact will likely depend on proximity to the Mexican or Canadian border, how reliant a state is on foreign energy imports, and whether it is subjected to countermeasures from overseas rivals deliberately targeting red state America. Newsweek contacted the U.S. Department of Commerce for comment via email. Outside of regular office hours, had not yet heard back. Following his return to the White House, Trump's imposed a series of new tariffs, which he argues are necessary to restore America's manufacturing capability, even though he doesn't know what a fucking tariff is, and end what he regards as the economic exploitation of the U.S. by foreign powers. Beginning in March, 25% on Mexico and Canada, except oil from north of the border, as well as an additional 10% tariff on China. Trump said the tariffs would remain in place until Mexico and Canada crack down on immigration and F-drug. So we know that the trade war has gone back and forth like a ping pong ball, which is part of why the stock market is so volatile. And I've talked about this before, like how could you be a small manufacturing company not knowing if the tariff's going to hit today, not knowing what the amount is going to be? How do you business plan? How do you staff? How do you acquire inventory? I mean, how do you operate your business? So it's crippling small manufacturing companies in particular, large manufacturing companies too, but the small ones are the ones that are really that are really suffering. So geographical proximity. Speaking to Newsweek, Gary Clyde Hubfauer, a trade expert and non-resident senior fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics, said states bordering Canada and Mexico are likely to take a particular hit. Include states like Michigan, Minnesota, and New York, states on the northern border, and Texas, Arizona, and California in the south. A very strong empirical relationship in trade is that distance matters. In other words, countries close to one another trade much more than countries further apart. The same is true between states and provinces within a country. So the expectation is that farming and manufacturing is going to take a hit in those areas. Energy, red states in particular. According to Politico, Canada deliberately targeted Republican voting states with some of its retaliatory tariffs in a bid to bring the cost home to Trump's base. Products included in the tariffs include fruit from Florida, household appliances from Ohio and South Carolina, and motorcycles from southern Pennsylvania. The New Republic reports the EU made a similar move with a special focus on Republican states, including soybeans from Louisiana and beef and poultry from Kansas and Nebraska. I love the petty. I love the petty.
I agree. I mean, hurt the people that are hurting you. I agree. Or, I mean, like, and that's a great strategy. I mean, I don't want anyone to suffer. And there are people in those states who, like Victoria was saying, there are progressives in Tennessee, Sure. But I do think that if we're going to change the electoral map, if we're going to get somebody else in power who will stop the madness, pressuring those states is probably the best way to go. I mean, we're probably on the edge. You know what I mean? We're probably one of them.
I mean, like Tennessee whiskey, bourbon from Kentucky. I mean, all these things that have been targeted. I mean, there was that dramatic video of Canadian retailers removing American liquor from their shelves, and most of those are produced in red states, right? Similarly, when we were talking about South Carolina, motorcycle parts from South Carolina and Southern Pennsylvania, fruit from Florida, Louisiana beef, poultry from Kansas and Nebraska, that's real. So those individual states, now again, as we pay attention to the right-wing media machine, they will attempt to say that it's these, we can't depend on our allies. They're targeting you because you're a Trump voter. Yeah, they are. You're the ones that voted for this shit. So I think it's petty and I fucking love it.
And Trump it's just like Trump's non-knowledge of like industry, or just being like, Canada needs us more than we need them. Have you ever heard of a company called Diageo? Like, good luck trying to get, I don't drink anymore, but good luck trying to get drunk. Does anyone understand how many liquor brands Diageo? I used to work for them in advertising. Like, that's pretty much all of everyone. Like, Canada owns a lot of things that people don't know what they are.
So there's an additional, this is about the trade war. Retaliation will hit Trump voters the hardest. And this is from the New York Times reporting on this, come from a combination of sources, including the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the Department of Census. So foreign governments are answering President Trump's tariffs with tariffs of their own. The majority of the U.S. workers affected are Trump voters, a New York Times analysis shows. So, for example, number of jobs affected by retaliatory tariffs from China, Canada, and the EU. So China, the tariffs impacting counties that Kamala Harris won, job losses estimated at around 468,000 compared to 1.1 million in Trump counties. Now, we know that Trump won the large majority of counties, but there are some counties in the middle of Wyoming, for example, that have like 14 people in them. So, we're trying to make this apples to apples comparison. From a population perspective, it covers roughly the same amount of people. So the job impact will certainly disadvantage Trump voters more than Harris voters. Canada, Harris counties affect 2.8 million jobs compared to 3.7 million jobs in Trump counties, and the European Union, 2.5 million jobs affected by the Harris counties compared to 3.7 million by Trump. So these states, can you carry this for a second? There's somebody knocking at my door. I think it's UPS. You good?
Yeah, no, okay. Absolutely. Well, it's like, I'm not exactly sure what article he's reading from. If Canada joins the EU, which is being discussed, it'll strengthen trade from Canada to Europe. I know. Like, the craziest thing, this is the thing about trade blocks, right? Our trade block is Canada and Mexico. I mean, if we were going to not alienate anyone, it should be our own trade block that we're a part of, including with South America. Like, we move up and down the coast. Like, shipping costs are lower when we are trading within our trade block. So to alienate these people, like, that's what I said. I mean, these are literal strategies that are written in Russian think tank papers. And the only thing you could think after a while is, he wants to drive us into recession. He wants Russia's position in the world to be better. Like, he's literally driving us into the ground. For what reason? To benefit who? Not MAGA, not red states. No, it's like Fax is listening. It's making their lives even worse than blue states.
By the way, that was LDS knocking my door.
What's LBS?
LDS.
Oh, LDS. The brother.
Saints.
Yes. Yeah, with the bikes. Yep. Yes. I lived in Idaho. I went to university in Idaho. I'm very familiar.
Yeah, it was interesting. I said, "Listen, I'm sorry. I'm talking about a live. I'm deconstructing religion and politics. I don't know if this would be a good time for me to talk."
Yeah.
But I said hello. So back to this report. Number of jobs in select states for industries targeted by retaliatory tariffs. So they break this down by the states that'll be over-indexed in this survey. So primarily red states: Indiana, Iowa, Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi, Kentucky, Kansas, Michigan, Tennessee, Ohio, and South Carolina. Those states they predict on this measurement scale to be impacted the most.
What website are you on, or article are you reading from?
I'll send it to you.
Oh, cool. Cool. I want to look at this.
It's just it's a post, but you can read the data. I think when you see things like this and you see the impact that it's going to be, again, this data comes from a combination of the Bureau of Labor and the Census Department. When you see our trading partners respond by targeted tariffs at particular states and they identify it publicly saying, listen, it's the Trump voters that have created this. We're not going to punish other states. And unfortunately, other states will be punished. California will be punished. Arizona will be punished. Border states. New Mexico potentially could be punished. States along the northern border can also be punished. But when you've got an opportunity to go after the people who've caused this problem, that's what they're doing. I find it fascinating that that's been the response. So we'll continue to watch that and we know that the tariffs haven't even really taken effect yet, and it hasn't even really started. So, and that's the scary part for all of us. Good morning, Auntie. How are you? Auntie L. Good morning.
Hi.
Hi there.
Oops.
Hi there. How are you? Okay. I just want to check in with our mod team as we approach the time to spin the wheel. Are we still doing that, y'all? You guys let me know, and I'd be happy to announce our winner when the time comes. I think here's where it is. Okay. Anyway, are you sticking? How long can you stay for? I know you've got to prep for your show today.
No, it's okay. Plug? Yeah, no, I'm going to take my dad to the doctor later. So I'm not going to do a show later. So I'm actually fine because I'm just going to take my dad to the doctor like early afternoon.
Okay. Just a quick check on the Dow. As it sits currently, the Dow is down 189 points as of this moment. And we've seen the trend to continue to go down. Stock market, we discussed this earlier. It's always been a reasonably sound investment. We've also gone through this exercise this morning where we certainly know that the overwhelming, the accumulation of wealth in our society stays at the top, doesn't circulate. The people that stand to benefit are the ones who can pick up the pieces when capitalism sort of crumbles. They'll buy low. We know that is very, very problematic as pensions and retirements. So when you combine that with eliminating Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, when you're raising the cost, when you're removing protections for seniors to get low cost and affordable drugs, all these things are going to make it incredibly hard on the people that they are targeting. Not only are they targeting the BIPOC community, not only are they targeting brown-skinned individuals, members of the trans community, women, etc., they're targeting everyone so that they can enrich themselves. Tax cuts for the rich, deregulating industries, offering, invest in America and get what? Remember they talked about these $25 million. If you invest at $25 million or $1 billion, what did that actually get you? Like, I think what it got you is fast track for regulatory approval more than anything else, right? So
you can pollute. That was the other.
Exactly.
Apparently you can pollute. That's what he said.
Exactly. And on that topic, I'm glad that's another good segue. All right. So you guys are ready. So let's take a little pause. So go for it, Eve. Let's do that. And then we'll make the announcement, as to who's going to win. So you guys are working on pulling that up. You guys let me know and then I'll announce our winner. So what we're doing again, as a reminder, people, here's Eve. Okay. There you go. Oh, you changed your mind. You didn't want to come up and talk to me? Whatever, Eve. Whatever. So there's another True Social post that I wanted to talk about that because on that particular subject, when we're talking about polluters, he did mention the EPA. If I can find it. This is a great one. Everybody, please keep tapping and sharing. Tapping is clapping, sharing is caring. Please be sure you're gifting Felice. Expect to see her over 3,000. Let's get that done. I say 5,000. I don't want to settle.
You know what I like about the market, since you're talking about the markets? Like, notice how, which Biden, the stock market was reaching record highs when he left the economy. All the forecasts were great. Everything was supposed to be better. And now when you start hearing people like Scott Bessent, who learn at the feet of George Soros and is a hedge fund manager, start saying, oh, it's just a correction. The market is correcting itself. That's what you say to dumb people when you're trying to convince them not to pull their money out of the market. I love listening to them use all these words. It's just a correction.
Exactly. I can't find the EPA tweet, but I had it someplace. But there's a couple other ones that I think we should call to your attention. For those of you who don't spend time on Truth Social, I do not recommend it. Someone mentioned this in the chat earlier, and I'm sure you've seen this, Felice. Hunter Biden has had Secret Service protection for an extended period of time, all paid for by the United States taxpayer. There are as many as 18 people on his detail, which is ridiculous. He is currently vacationing in, of all places, South Africa, where the human rights of people has been strenuously questioned. We can unpack that. Because of this, South Africa has been taken off our list of countries receiving economic and financial assistance. Please be advised that, effective immediately, Hunter Biden will no longer receive Secret Service protection. Likewise, Ashley Biden, who has 13 agents, will be taken off the list as well.
I saw that. It's like, I saw someone just saying Ashley, but yeah, it's absolutely, are we surprised? Absolutely not.
Let me just go back here and check this real quick. Okay. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. Right there. All right. So then another one. This one is even worse for people who tend to want to pay attention to democracy. It has to do with the people that have been appointed to various positions in our military. For example, some names you will recognize from the past. I am pleased to announce a new board of visitors for our nation's oldest military academy, West Point. Major General David Bellavia, Lieutenant General Dan Walrath, Congressman Wesley Hunt, Maureen Bannon, Megan Mobbs, and General Michael Flynn. Mike Flynn is a traitor. Mike Flynn is a convicted felon who was pardoned by Trump the first time. And Mike Flynn is supposed to be the one in charge of the new board of visitors at West Point. Completing my list of appointments to the United States Naval Academy, I'm happy to announce the full board will consist of Sean Spicer, Walt Nauta, Congressman Dr. Ronnie Jackson,
Trump's human shield,
exactly.
the Mar-a-Lago docs case, who's been credibly accused of essaying a woman.
Correct. Congressman Ronnie Jackson, Congressman Derek Van Order, Senator Tim Sheehy, and Earl Earhart. Congratulations to you all. Our great United States Air Force Academy will soon have an incredible board of visitors composed of Doug Nicolai, Dan Clark, Senator Tommy Tuberville, Dina Powell, and get ready for this one, Charlie Kirk. Meritocracy, Felice. Only the best.
Mediocre white men filling up.
Only the best and brightest.
No qualified people whatsoever, but we have to hear about DEI.
Tommy Tuberville, by the way, one of the people, so he has authority now over the U.S. Navy. He was the one that held up appointments, promotions, through branches of the military because he was so pissed off about gender affirming care.
Well, yeah, and AB care for women, like on military bases. Yeah, Tommy Tuberville is the least qualified person. The Secretary of the Navy has never been in the military, not in the reserves. He's a man named John Phelan, I like to call him, but it's Phelan. The only thing he ever did, Michael Dell, the computer guy. Yeah. He places trades for Michael Dell in a 5-person office. He's running the Navy. Like, the only qualification to be in a position Trump appoints you to is to not be qualified. And also, if you've been incredibly accused or covered up another person essaying a woman, they love that. That helps.
And I think it's important, since we'll segue to this right now, obviously. Can Mom is our winner. So Can Mom, congratulations. You are the winner of our little subscriber event. So you can then let us know. You can either direct message me, or you can direct message one of our amazing mods, or do it in here. Go to the merch store, figure out what item you want. If you don't want anything from the merch store, then let me know of a charitable cause that you support, and I will gladly contribute a $50 donation to that charity from me, as a way of saying thank you to all of our subscribers. So thank you guys for participating in our little bit of fun. Congratulations again, Can Mom. We appreciate you.
Congrats. Awesome.
So as we discussed before, and I think you might have touched on this, since we're talking about the military, I think this is a good opportunity to bring this up, that several military agencies have removed imagery of contributors made by minorities. This is why it matters. 26,000 records related to minority groups in service have been deleted or flagged for removal, including a picture of the Enola Gay bomber that dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan, August 6, 1945. Enola Gay, named after the pilot's wife, or secretary, wife. Okay. Arlington National Cemetery has also removed pages highlighting Black, Latino, and women veterans, erasing their stories from military history. Officials cite Trump's order to eliminate DEI initiatives as the reason for these removals, raising concerns that key figures and heroes are being erased from history. Pages honoring Medal of Honor recipients such as Major General Charles Calvin Rogers, the Tuskegee Airmen, and female Marines have been removed or flagged, fueling the debate over diversity versus merit in military history. Critics say this is an attempt to erase diverse contributions from military history, while supporters argue it is a routine federal compliance measure focused on merit-based recognition. This decision could impact future generations, limiting access to information on historical contributions, military diversity, civil rights, etc. The fight to restore these records isn't over. People need to hold these organizations accountable. I think I read that story, and I kind of I think I'd read over it quickly because there's so much information out there. But we've spoken many times about whitewashing history. This one just doesn't make sense to me, meaning that these are things that have happened that we've celebrated before. So removing references to the Enola Gay does what? We know that the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. We know that a plane did it. Just because it says gay on the side of the plane? We know that the Tuskegee Airmen existed. They don't want future generations to know. We know that there have been Medal of Honor winners that are Black. They don't want people to know that either.
No, of course not. I mean, history matters, right? Like erasure matters. Like, I mean, that's like the debate. Like, I go back and forth with myself as somebody who has a degree in history. Like, you know, that's erasing people from history matters. That's why people wanted Confederate statues to be torn down, right? Yeah. Like eliminating the past and then refusing to teach it is complete erasure, right? I mean, it's a terrifying thing to think about. Words matter, history matters, you know, like, and that's the thing about minorities though. And like what gives me hope through oral history and stuff. If there's one thing, you know, Black people are amazing with like teaching their own history. You know, if you have ever grown up in a Black family, like, I mean, part of my family's Black and they're just, you know, they don't wait for public education to teach their history. Right. I mean, that's why amazing resources like TikTok matter. If you're not on BIPOC TikTok, if you don't listen, you know, representation matters. Exactly. Images matter, right? Seeing, oh, a Black man did this. A Black man was a 4-star general, saying, if he did it, I can do it, right? Like erasing those examples in history for young brown and Black children. I mean, that is powerful and terrifying.
I'm glad you said it that way because it is. So again, it's the same rhetoric used against the communities that are constantly under assault. The BIPOC community, women, LGBTQIA. So the references to all these things would highlight the contributions of members of those communities are just going to be erased from the history books. So by design, I mean, think about what Pete Hegseth has said about women serving in combat, or the variety of things that members of the Trump administration said. Even women in the Trump administration have said about women in combat and serving. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard, who served in combat, has even come out and said that women shouldn't serve in combat. Like, it's just this part of this. I don't know where it goes, which again speaks to what we're talking about today. Is there courage left in politics? Is there anyone that can say, why are we diminishing the contributions to people in our military? We would not have these freedoms. How can we not recognize a Medal of Honor winner just because he's black? Where's the courage? Where are people standing up against that kind of stuff? Like the veterans marches over the weekend, I think showed that there is a lot of movement in that community. I know that I always be careful when I speak to this because veterans don't want to be tokenized in this conversation. But where are some of the Trump supporting veterans that are like, why are we erasing this history? What is going on here? Or Republicans who identify as Republican who say that they're not about Trump. They just don't like the Democrats. Where are they? Why are they not speaking up? Where is that courage? Where are those people who claim to support our men and women in uniform? Where are they? Why have they not put their hand up to say this is just disgusting and despicable? After the Arlington Cemetery event, I thought that might have been one of those moments, right? Thought maybe that would have been one of those moments where people said, this is just crazy how he's disrespecting the military. Never mind all the other things that he's done. It's nuts.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I just think, just as a history teacher, history is powerful. Representation matters. And then you draw that, this is all McCarthyism, right? This has all happened before. It's also with Trump taking over the Kennedy Center. It's oh, that's stupid. Who cares? But that's what Trump's doing. Remember? And it's the most ridiculous band of idiots. But, he declared, who are they? Sylvester Stallone, John Voight, and oh my God. And was they're gonna make, these are my eyes and ears in Hollywood. This all happened before, right? Let's return representation in Hollywood. Don't show representation of the trans community. Don't show representation of lesbian and gay people. Don't show representation of brown and black people, right? They're gonna return it to the good Mel Gibson. Thank you. I knew I was forgetting another idiot. Yeah, let's go back to the good old days, when Mel Gibson's saying slurs and whatever the F, that's literally what they're trying to do. And think those pictures, seeing yourself in film or people like you in film and saying, hey, art imitates life, and it lets you know what's possible. And yeah, Trump's taking over what is it called in Christian nationalism? It's the 7 mountains or 7 pillars. Yeah, mandate. That's what it is. It's you're supposed to get involved in politics. You're supposed to get involved in education. You're supposed to get involved in media. They're supposed to take over all of these areas. And the scariest part about erasure to me is I used to think I wasn't good at math, but now thanks to MAGA, I realize I'm actually a genius. So, and I love statistical analysis. I love impact studies. It's how I know mathematically that systemic racism exists, that brown and black people in this country are being systemically discriminated against, right? Mathematics is how we know that. And what the scariest part of this erasure is the erasure of ethnicity, of races, of just saying in Project 2025, it's not just stop teaching history. It's no more check boxes for the LGBTQIA, no more check boxes for brown and black people, so that way we can no longer do impact studies. We can no longer say people are being discriminated against definitively. I know because math.
Right. Not only that, but eliminating funding for the NIH, removing funding for pulling us out of the WHO because they don't want to invest. They don't want to have to deal with the next pandemic, because there will be. So instead, they just want to eliminate the agencies who would inform the American voter that the American citizen, that something might happen. Similarly with education, and I want to get your thoughts on this. We heard Trump's, the newly revised Trump University pitch that we played a little while ago. But when you're talking about eliminating funding for the DOE, Department of Ed, I want to be very clear about say that, not the Department of Energy. We know what it does. We know that it supports IEPs and IDEA programs. But in particular, for my concern is that it's the elimination of access to public school in the marginalized communities, which again speaks to what we just went through, that exercise about eliminating history and erasure. Because then those private schools have the ability to set their own agenda, to set their own curriculum, to set their own priorities. If they want to turn it into a religious institution, they certainly can do that. There's going to be nothing stopping them. And then the ability for every one of our, listen, I believe that housing is a human right. I believe that healthcare is a human right. And I believe that access to public education is a human right. And, those seem like they're simple things. That's why when we have conversations in this space and I say that I'm a progressive, people who live outside of the United States, like, you're not fucking progressive. You don't even have healthcare. What are you talking about? You're not progressive. So I think it's related. And I think part of this uphill fight that we have, especially when it comes to education, is because it solves so many problems. An informed electorate, an educated electorate, an electorate that's paying attention, an electorate that knows, wow, I did not know that. We don't talk about it in terms of history repeating, but history certainly rhyming. Why we make these analogies to 1930s Germany is because we're fucking living it again. That's why. So I'm deeply concerned about the full frontal assaults on a variety of things, but education in particular. I know that's an important point for you.
Oh, yeah. And I'm just going to send you this ProPublica article. And there's a series that ProPublica, I think ProPublica is doing a great job talking about the erasure of women and women's health issues, right? And medical research, which, by the way, just with confidence, anytime, if you ever are trapped with your annoyingly uninformed MAGA family, like I usually am, and they're talking about, oh, did you hear these we're spending money on medical research? Well, we know that for every dollar of our taxpayer dollars that's invested in any medical research, I don't care if your mind is too small to understand why we would need to study, the migration period, like patterns of wombats, but we do, right? There's many applications and we make $2.46 back. That's called in capitalism a return on investment, right? We should never deny medical research. I was reading a fellow, I don't know if it's Brown or Cornell, but it's an Ivy League woman doing her doctoral work on uterine fibroids. This is something that plagues women. Dr. Danny, talks all the time about how 90% of research, U.S. funded research is focused on men. The only thing that matters seems to be making sure 100-year-old men can still have erections, whereas no medical research. I mean, that seems to be what is most important in this country. Or middle-aged men aren't feeling very manly. Let's get them all access to testosterone, which I was recently reading this study from Stanford about how if talking about how if you've had elevated testosterone, you're more likely to unalive people and all sorts of things, which is terrifying. But I mean, that's what matters. Meanwhile, this research for uterine fibroids that she was making no money off of and had dedicated her life to, gone. But we're all supposed to have kids too. Forced birth matters, but let's not study women's health. But in education, and I thought I sent the article. I didn't. There's a series ProPublica is doing and I used to be a teacher, so I'm very passionate about the school vouchers and what they're doing. Arizona is an example of the danger of school vouchers. We're 48 in education. We were 49. We did not move up. Oklahoma got dumber. So actually, we moved up by default. We are just slightly now less dumb than people in Oklahoma. But that's not because we rose up. They just failed more. Though apparently buying Trump Bibles for millions of dollars does not help children with their math scores, their reading scores. It's the weirdest thing. So I'm just school vouchers. We know in Arizona, 97% of school vouchers, which is taking money out of public schools, is used by upper middle class white children, right? Because if you don't have, if your parents are working 2-3 jobs, if you don't have transportation, if you don't have, maybe the school voucher covers 1/3 of the tuition, but you'll need to pay the additional 2/3, or you can't afford school lunches, or, hey, where are private schools? They're in certain areas of the city, right? Nowhere near where poor children are. So, I mean, it's this idea rich people will say, well, I want my tax dollars to follow my child. At the expense of what, right? You know, public schools are already funded off property tax. It's already a Jim Crow type segregation. And ProPublica is doing a series. I sent you one of the latest ones. It's called Segregation Academies Across the South Are Getting Millions in Taxpayer Dollars. They are literally using school voucher programs. Because here's the best part. Oh, hey, poor kids, you can all have a school voucher too. But that doesn't mean they have to let you in the private schools.
No,
they are literally across Mississippi, North Carolina, creating segregation academies. That's what school voucher money is being used for.
Private schools across the South that were established for white children during desegregation are now benefiting from tens of millions in taxpayer dollars flowing from rapidly expanding voucher-style programs. In North Carolina alone, we identified 39 of these likely segregation academies that are still operating that have received voucher money. Of these, 20 schools reported student bodies that were at least 85% white. Those 20 academies, all founded in the 60s and 70s, brought in more than $20 million from the state in the past 3 years alone. None reflected the demographics of their communities. Few even came close. Northeast Academy, a small Christian school in rural Northampton County on the Virginia border, is among them. As of the 2021-22 survey, the school's enrollment was 99% white in a county that runs 40% white.
Hey, nothing could go wrong there. Amazing. Hey, everyone has access to a school voucher, just not a school that will let you in. Don't worry, though.
Vouchers play a similar role at Lawrence Academy, an hour's drive south. It has never reported black enrollment higher than 3% in a county whose population hovers around 60% black. A small school with less than 300 students, it received $518,000 in vouchers last year to help pay for 86 of those students. Wow. In different terms, we should not expect, because people who are on the voucher, people who are quite frankly not very educated, are speaking in terms of vouchers being a win for their children, when we have to understand that vouchers, first of all, would never cover the cost of these charter schools or these voucher recipient schools. Not only that, I've talked about this before, how do parents who rely on public transportation get their kids there? What about school lunch programs? What about after school programs? Again, public education is free to the American taxpayer. It has to be, because of the things we're talking about. We already know that we have test scores that we're failing our kids. We're failing our kids. And somebody just said this is legacy racism. Further
Absolutely.
South, Pungo Christian Academy has received voucher money every year since 2015. As of last survey, had become slightly more white than when the voucher program began. It last reported a student body that was 98% white in a county that was only 65% white. Sounds like
and the more as a teacher, the more you dig into this. Oh, I mean, the point is the segregation. Not just based on race, but based on socioeconomic status, classism, and based on also, it's like Trump. You know, we know Trump seems to have extreme disdain for the disabled, right? IEP, right? Like, if you need an individualized education program, I'm neurodivergent. I'm extremely brilliant. But like I had a tough time, you know, sometimes I need more time to think, or I need to be sitting in the hallway because I can't focus, or whatever, you know, I need extra attention. And a lot of people do. They don't have that at private schools. They don't have the accreditation. They don't have the teachers. They don't provide that. So we're taking children who need IEPs, specialized education, tailored to them so that they can succeed. And we're defunding the only schools where that is available.
Segregation academies, first of all, the segregation academies that remain vastly white continue to play an integral role in perpetuating school segregation, and as a result, racial separation in the surrounding communities. We found these academies benefiting from public money in southern states beyond North Carolina, but because North Carolina collects and releases more complete data than many other states, it offers an especially telling window into what is happening across this once legally segregated region, where legislatures are rapidly expanding and adopting controversial voucher-style programs. This almost reminds me of the soundbite that the right like to play during the election season of when Joe Biden was talking about busing, and he talked about the racial jungle comment that he made, because this, in many ways, kind of touches on that a little bit.
The most misunderstood quote of Joe Biden. Like,
exactly.
If you think that he was making a racist comment, in fact, it was the opposite.
Exactly.
He was saying,
go for it.
Yeah, because I was a kid who was bused places.
To this,
I used to be a teacher, so I'm very passionate about this. I went to a public school because I was very intelligent. There's these IB and magnet programs called the International Baccalaureate Program. So I was bused to a school that was upper middle class white. And so were also inner city Hispanic children. Like I lived in the inner city, still do in Arizona, to the suburbs. And what Joe Biden was saying was, we cannot create a system where we have all white neighborhoods and then we just bus poor children to these schools. We need to have lower income housing or affordable housing inside these districts. These need to be integrated districts with all levels of housing, so that we do not create situations where, Jim Crow is basically funding our public schools, where based on low property taxes, the only things people have access to is, low funded schools, or you're being bused to a place where it's traumatizing. I mean, that's what happened to me. I either was in private school my whole life, which was traumatizing, or I was traumatized by being bused to a very rich area where I also should not have been.
So, I think just the overall, my overall thoughts on this obviously is just the more of the same, systemic racism. But it's part of the design, right? To villainize marginalized groups by not giving them the opportunity, based on just the fact that they happen to live in these communities, that they should be entitled and have access to public education as well. So like we say very, very often, and you said it very, very well, people of means have the ability to provide these services to their kids. I live in a pretty progressive state when it comes to education. Like you can attend your son or daughter, your children, non-binary kids can attend any school within your district. So it's not school choice. It's just within your district, because the districts in Vermont sometimes are 45 miles apart. So they create this scenario, and it's actually, they did a study a few years ago, and it's always balanced itself out. So there was concern that some would choose other schools, but it's always balanced itself out based on convenience, based on lots of factors, right? Now, something like this, when the population of a particular community is 60% white and 95% of the enrollees in these schools are white, what does that say? That says that vouchers are intended to thin the herd, so to speak. There's I don't know how else you would describe it, right?
Yeah, and I've done a lot of, as a historical researcher, I did a lot of research on the origins of school vouchers, which it had to, a lot of the origins started in Ohio with the Catholic Church, right? And it's about giving kids access to like these Catholic diocese schools. And literally in the debates around school vouchers, when they were trying to stop it in like the late 80s, early 90s in Ohio, someone said, in the debate in the state legislature, hey, what's going to stop people from from groups like the KKK, the Triple K, using these school vouchers to make what is exactly what I'm showing you ProPublica is studying, segregation schools. And the literal response of the conservatives in Ohio was, well, they're already doing it with homeschool. Huh. And by the way, these schools don't have to be accredited. That's the scary thing. At least charter schools, they have some level of accreditation and some level of standardized testing. These school voucher schools, I mean, kids are not learning. Just to be clear, I mean, in Arizona, there's no test scores. There's no standardized testing. There's no standard of learning. There's no oversight. The point is for people not to learn.
Right, and it's always the states in the criticism of public education, and there are things that we can find within I'm sure people could be objective. We can find things within our public education system that we'd criticize. That's part of being an active and an informed voter. But they assault teachers verbally, in some cases physically. That teachers are the ones that are doing a disservice to their children. Meanwhile, it's the states that are grossly underfunding their schools. Schools in black and brown communities are shuttered for whatever reason. There's now the USDA has been tasked with cutting funding for free school lunch programs. Every state, I think, except for 4, is on the list. We can look at educational outcomes. It's states that invest in their students. It's states that invest in their schools that have the best results. That's not rocket surgery, as a friend of mine used to say. That's not rocket surgery. If you invest in your school and you invest in your students, you're likely going to get better results. Massachusetts is a perfect example. New Jersey is a perfect example. Vermont, we have a lot of issues with taxes in our little state that does not exist because we spend a lot of money on education, because it's important to the citizenry up here. By and large, school budgets pass, which is, I was reading the statistic. Typically speaking, Vermont seems to be, when it comes to school district votes, we generally we vote to increase our taxes because we care about our schools. And I think it's just, when you see things like the Trump University or the new Trump University, the American Institute, whatever that might be, and when you see cutting funding for public education or eliminating funding, and you see these voucher programs reported on by ProPublica, that tells you a clear divide as to, from an ideological perspective, who cares about education and who doesn't. I mean, it's obvious. These same people who criticize it are educated in elite, liberal, woke Ivy League universities that they criticize all the time.
I know. Isn't that the ultimate irony? And someone said they're trying to do this in Texas. Yes, in Texas. I was looking up the names. There's a ProPublica article. If you're in Texas or want to learn more about there's 2 billionaires in Texas. Their names are like Ferris Wilks and Sam. The article is called "A Pair of Billionaire Preachers." They made their money in oil, not in preaching, but a pair of billionaire preachers built the most powerful political machine in Texas. That's just the start. These are the ones who are trying to oust the ones that tried to impeach Ken Paxton, like Dade Phelan and stuff. Like, these are the people, and they're forcing school vouchers in Texas. And I've had a theory why Texas has held out so long. Do you know why I think it is? Why? Football and baseball has saved Texas because they like their public schools for sports and because of rural areas, right? This is why Fax and I are passionate about working with Will Westmoreland. Like, who will be first damaged by this? Rural areas. There aren't private schools in rural areas. Money is just taken out of public school. People that have the means will go somewhere else with their voucher, and people in rural areas will suffer. Hospitals are closing, right? Where's the first funding gone when Medicaid expansion goes away? Rural areas, hospitals close, schools close. That's why rural people who voted for Trump, that is the message they need to receive. You have a right to education and you have a right to healthcare, and you are being deprived of it. You are in education deserts, healthcare deserts, and something needs to be done.
Before I introduce Clarice, Edith, thank you for thinking of me and my daughter. She just said, Steve, did you read what Harvard is offering students? Thought of your daughter. Harvard has said that people with assets less than $200,000, if admitted, can get free tuition. So some of the schools that we saw on the West Coast were offering something very, very similar to that as well. I appreciate that, but my daughter does not want to go to Harvard. That I know. We've talked about that. I'm like, what do you think about Harvard? She's like,
Harvard.
No. Harvard. Yeah, Pakikahia. But I'm glad you said what you said, because again, this is a divide that we see. And I speak to the courage aspect of this, like people who represent these rural districts, who knows that not only should we look at public schools as a source of education for all of the most valuable assets that we all have as parents, but they're also community hubs. Like, your school is like the heartbeat of your community. You know, it's where events happen. It's where backyard picnics happen. It's where bake sales happen. It's where, you can watch your son or daughter in a school play. It's literally at the lifeblood of your community. So where are the courageous Republicans who represent these districts, who knows that these schools are going to close? And how do they speak to the constituents about that? How do they address the fact that we've got more segregation with these segregation academies in the South? Where's the courage? They just won't show up. They just won't do it. It's pretty disturbing.
That's why we need to do like virtual town halls. I think these are issues we should try to discuss and have people in rural areas speak. I mean, whoever they are, and not in a combative way, but just in a way of like, hey, we need to talk about that you're going to be over an hour and a half drive to a hospital in an emergency. They might deny you care, right? I mean, if private equity keeps taking over hospitals, now there's private equity doctors where if that's the only doctor on staff, then you can't, even if you're dying, they won't help you unless you have the right insurance. I mean, these are terrifying things going on.
That's a really good point. When we talk about, see, all these things relate back to this conversation, in my opinion, about the fact that our society is not very healthy and not very well educated. The two things that I care about the most are universal health care and overfunding public education, because to be objective observers, when we can look and we can see it, our society is overweight and obese and we're not healthy. And we talk about this in terms of what other countries do, like when Canada or the UK provides universal healthcare coverage, there are also a lot of ingredients in foods that they don't allow that we allow here. That's because the government has invested in the health of their citizenry. So they don't want those things in their food because they know they're unhealthy, whether it be all the dyes or all the, the additives and things like that. I look at it similarly to education, right? The fact that other countries see the value in investing in their children so they can grow up and be extremely bright and members and advocates for future generations and standing there learning and sharing their learned knowledge to make their societies around them better. We just don't prioritize that in our country. We just don't. There's no argument that can be made to say that as a nation, we don't prioritize public health and we don't prioritize education.
Well, yeah, and I think, and this is I could talk about, I love when we get to talk and see if I love these types of conversations. And and when you think about why that is, what is wrong with America, it is about, it's two different things. It's about preventative models of healthcare versus emergent, right? Correct. And then capitalism, like America is invested in people being sick. Exactly. Right? Like, that is where the for-profit in our healthcare comes from. And unless we get away from for-profit healthcare and switch to some sort of universal, I'm not saying there will always be some for-profit element, sure, right? But as long as people are invested in us staying sick, instead of, curing, having a vaccine or curing herpes, having a pill you need every month, what's better? Keeping people taking a pill every month or curing a disease? There's no vested interest in big pharma solving any problems just to keep us. I think the average American is on 7 prescriptions.
I read that as well recently. Yep, 7.
The point is for us to stay sick. Or I can't remember. I was listening to a debate with a hospital administration person talking about, someone was talking about curative, why aren't you focused on this? And the hospital administrator was like, well, we're paid per procedure. That's how I generate revenue for this hospital. Danny was explaining this to me. It's called Bones and Babies hospitals. That's where, you make the most money. It was talking about their business model and what they're invested in. And when it's per procedure, there's no interest in anyone being healthy and anyone being okay.
Nope. Are you familiar with the Bayer Monsanto merger, Felice?
Oh, God. I am familiar with Monsanto. I didn't know they're merging with Bayer.
Yeah.
What?
So Bayer.
Are they going to poison people together? Oh, my God. That's dark.
It gets worse than that. Bayer has one of the leading pharmaceutical treatments for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Monsanto produced Roundup,
poisons,
which caused
literal poisons,
non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and now they are one company under one umbrella. So the poison and the cure.
Exactly, spray the poison on the food.
Exactly. So, yeah. This topic, I agree. I don't think it gets discussed enough. So when we see things like desegregation academies and we see a closing of large metropolitan area health centers and creating, OBGYN, reproductive healthcare deserts in the southeast of America and all these things, this is all part of, this is not a coincidence that these things are happening. This is by design. This is separating. This is creating a perfect society, right? Whether you call it, Aryan or whatever you want to call it. We've got historical examples that we can point to where women are treated as property. You can call it The Handmaid's Tale if you'd like. Sure, I think that aptly fits. I think it's more Hunger Games, quite frankly, but close enough. We already know about the systemic racism that permeates our society in every area. Here we are, segregation academies, going back to Jim Crow, going back to pre-civil rights, all these kinds of things. Education quality, access to education, access to clean water. access to clean fucking water, access to reliable food chains. There are food deserts. We talked about earlier about the impacts of poverty. We know that how poverty is the number one driver for crime. So you keep communities poor by design, and then you accuse said communities that are impacted the most by poverty of committing these crimes. You create the system that they exist in. You create the system that they exist in, and then you blame them for that.
Yeah. I advise everyone to look up a report called Pregnancy as a Crime. It's the perfect example of how healthcare and crime integrate to socially engineer people out of existence or have no upward mobility. Pregnancy as a Crime is a report. I mean, it is literally charging people, shocker, mostly in Alabama and all over the South, where there's a maternal health desert, where people have no access to healthcare. Like, one of the main crimes is not getting prenatal care. But it's an hour and a half drive in these health deserts and waits. You have to be past the first trimester now for an OBGYN to even see you because of these strict AB bans. And then they're charging people with the crime of not getting prenatal care in the South. You literally cannot win. There's no way to win. It's fascinating. You know what the more fascinating thing about that report is? Who is charged with those crimes? You would think probably brown and black people, right? But no, it's white women. And do you know why? Because they're like, you have to think about what's inside them. They're pregnant. What's more valuable? A white baby or a brown or a black baby? So it's actually white women who are charged with these crimes because society sees their babies as more valuable. So you know what I mean? Hurting a white woman hurting her baby seems to be more important than brown and black women. It's fascinating to read these reports.
I have a new book. I have a book for you to read. I don't know if you read it. It's called Poverty by America by Matthew Desmond.
And I love books.
Yeah, I've played the clip, and I'm about halfway through it. Since we're talking about this topic, I think it's relevant to bring it up. He talks about how we as a society have very easily could solve hunger, poverty. And the way he breaks it down, of course, he was on with Jon Stewart, and I think this conversation is great. So I'll just play this little clip because we've talked about this before.
Dollars dedicated to food stamps gets you $1.5 billion in our GDP. If you look at what it does for kids, the long-term economic and health benefit for kids, it's a huge return on investment. It's about $1 in food stamps gets you $62 coming back to you in a society. Meanwhile, right, when we cut the corporate tax rate, the benefits that we get are a lot less. We get a lot less than we're promised often when we're doing that. So investing in American people and stabilizing communities that need it the most is the best way for all of us.
I got to tell you that out of all that argument, that to me was the most concise and powerful because it's one that I really haven't heard, which is you don't understand, like, we're not just giving people money, we're investing and getting a huge return. Right. And all these corporate subsidies are not getting us a good return.
Right. His name is Matthew Desmond, and the book is Poverty, by the United States. We'll post it in the Discord. What I really like about the example that he gave is that it puts people on notice to say, listen, here's what the data tells us. If you invest in the American citizenry, like if you provide middle-class tax cuts, we know what that does. If we provide investments in infrastructure, we know what that does. If you provide, access to clean water, to food, we know what that does. $1 investment gets you $62 back when you invest in food stamps, something like that. So keep in mind that we are in capitalism, which requires people to spend money. So if you invest in people, then they will, again, people who live at the income level that we all live in, we're spenders. We're not hoarders like the top. We're spenders. We participate in our economic system, which again goes back to what we were just discussing, healthcare and education. So many families in our country, so many, even in states that we would consider affluent, still depend on free school lunches for their kids, breakfast and lunch. Oftentimes in many of those communities, that may be the only good meals that those kids get over the course of the day. So instead of trying to make those programs better, they, being the Republicans and conservatives, just want to make the situation worse so people continue to suffer. And
it's almost like if MAGA was really smart, they would know they're creating the opposite problem, right? Like we know every grade higher people pass, right? Every year more they're educated is more money they will, right, recirculate through the economy, or more money they will provide to Social Security and Medicare and be taxed on. More money, like it creates upward mobility. It creates less dependence on the social safety net.
Exactly. I mean, they always talk about wanting to get people off of welfare. I'm sure that most people who are
you do it, you teach them to read.
Exactly. You invest in their future. You give them access to. Think there are schools in my little state that, again, that really does care about education, that have nothing. They are sharing resources, but the teachers are dedicated. The community is dedicated to making sure those kids have as best that they can. Right. So we just take this for granted. We take education for granted, and we demonize teachers, and we blame them, and we go to school board meetings and say that, nothing against homeschoolers, but people who are homeschooling their kids may not be the ones that are best cut out to homeschool their kids. Let's be honest. Right. Let's be honest about that. It's not courageous to say we need to do better by our children. There's not a parent. I shouldn't say not a parent. Most parents, we'd like to think, want what's best for their kids. I think we could likely agree on that. Why would you not want the best education? You want Make America Great Again? You want America First? Then have the best fucking public education system that exists anywhere in the world. To have the best healthcare system that exists anywhere in the world. It's not that we can't do it. We absolutely can. There is no appetite because the conservative Christian, the Christian nationalists don't want black people to have the same advantages. Period. Mic drop. They just don't. Because they know if their lives get better in their white communities, that means that they've got to spread the love over black communities as well. They don't want that. How disgusting is that?
Yeah, we have to limit upward mobility. Exactly. That's why they have to destroy affirmative action, right? Like, that's what, like, most upper middle class people don't realize. They're like, why do black people get that? Affirmative action is having, stocks in the stock market. Affirmative action is having, is inheriting something from your parents. Affirmative action is being pulled over less by the police. Upper middle class white people are affirmed every single day in society. Literally.
It's just, I don't know if that is ever going to change, meaning that the lack of investment in our citizenry. I don't see that changing necessarily in my lifetime.
Yeah, because the point is to have this, I think he has a master's in history. He's a history teacher. He's on this app. He's amazing. He was talking about fascism and how it's about the struggle, right? Like there's fascism always has to have a struggle. There has to be an other, right? And that's the point. The point is not to actually create upward mobility. The point is conservatives want to say, I'm tired of paying for those other people.
Exactly.
Right? That is the point, is to have an other. Sometimes it's the trans community. Sometimes it's brown and black people. Sometimes it's poor people. It's about the struggle. There has to be an other. There has to be an enemy within at all times. The point is never about fixing a problem. It's about identifying and othering people and complaining.
So when you see, like I know the virtual town hall, and that's something that we are going to do, Felice. Just so you know.
We are.
Yes.
So, I believe in us.
I know. I believe in us as well. Yay, us. High five. The whole, when you start to see the Republican town halls, and of course the claim from the right is that they're Democratic paid plants. Well, Democrats do live in these districts as well. So they may be Democrats at these particular town hall events, but they're still members of that community who voted. And you can just watch when confronted with things that we discuss every day, like, why are you supporting veterans benefit? Why aren't you supporting veterans benefits? Why are you firing federal employees? My husband or wife lost their job. Why aren't you talking about lowering prices? Why aren't you talking about investing in communities? All these things you guys said you promised. And because they've been operating off this script, and I know you've talked about this and I've talked about this a million times, when you don't have policy to run on, and all you run on is hate and rhetoric and targeted attacks against marginalized groups, when you're confronted to respond to a policy question, you got nowhere to go. And you're seeing it time and time and time again. They're getting triggered. They're not responding. I've got one here I'll play. They don't know how to navigate through these, which is great, which is why you need to have more people, which is why fucking Bernie again, going out everywhere, red states, blue states, poor communities, more developed communities. He's going everywhere and reminding voters that you don't have to accept this. You don't have to accept this. Bernie going out publicly saying, I don't mind what Doge is doing. I don't think any of us would mind to try to find waste, fraud, and abuse in our system. Objectively, we would all support that, but they're not finding that. Just because you don't like something doesn't mean it's fraud. Just because you don't like the amount of money that was spent on something doesn't mean it was wasteful. This is what they can't respond to. So the right is trapped now. Either their policies absolutely fucking work and we get money from tariffs and society crumbles and they rebuild it, or this is the end of their party because they don't run on legislation. They don't run on policies to benefit the people, especially the people that voted for them. The people that are going to be harmed the most in some cases, with the exception of the marginalized groups because they're always harmed, are the ones that are going to suffer. They're voters. They're rural voters. White Christian men who have always been 3/4 of the way up the ladder are the ones that are paying the price. Let me see if I can find that clip. Thoughts on that?
Oh no, I'm 100. I am 100% on board. Like if you watch these town halls, Bernie has not stopped campaigning, right? I don't even know if he's going to run again. He's still on the campaign trail and he's not showing up like these Republicans. I watched that guy, Representative Chuck Edwards in Asheville, North Carolina, that town hall. He made people like prove they're in his district by zip code, by address. When he would read questions, like he had people verifying those were his constituents, and still he was ran over. Like, if you don't understand not everyone in your district is going to agree with you, and you're treating them like shit, I mean, it's ridiculous. If you go watch the town halls Bernie's having in rural areas and in the Midwest, he's going there and he's saying, not who's a Republican, who's a conservative, who's a progressive. He's saying, tell me what hurts. Like, tell me what pain you're feeling. And he's letting people in the audience literally tell their stories. Like one guy in Nebraska is like, hey, I have to make the choice between, is my son going to have reading glasses or am I? Exactly. Like that's the type of things. And it's not about being a conservative or a progressive or a Republican or a Democrat. He's listening to people say what hurts and he has real solutions.
Just a programming note, just for a heads up for you and for my mods, I just got a capitalism request, so I have to end a little early today. So at 11:30, just wanted to give everybody a heads up. Speaking of Chuck Edwards, that was the clip I was going to play from his town hall. And this is a train wreck. But this is
why do you support a president that cares nothing about NATO, Ukraine, and democracy, but cares about Putin and other dictators?
And the crowd was standing up and cheering.
Actually, I believe that the president is very supportive of Ukraine.
The average age at that town hall was like 60 too. Like these are like older people like standing up doing everything but like throwing tomatoes at this man. I watched that I watched hours of that. I could not get enough of that.
And I think this kind of sort of wraps everything that we've sort of discussed today, right? It's like an opportunity. You're standing in front of the people that you expect to send you back to DC, right? You've got an opportunity to say, yes, I don't like what the president is doing. I do not believe in this. I believe that Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, all these things. What an easy opportunity. What an easy opportunity to say that to your voters. Instead, you're going to gaslight. And to tell your voters, the people in your district, that Trump supports Ukraine? I mean,
I say this all the time in my lives, like, it's the insults to our intelligence, Like in our intelligence, like I'm not saying we're all geniuses, but nobody is that stupid, Chuck. Like you went to the people that put you where you are, and you insulted their intelligence over and over and over again. That Vietnam vet that like tried to fight him.
Oh my! I was like, with the cast on his hand.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh my! I know. Well, and that's also an example. Like white men, like don't underestimate your power. Like show up at these events and scream, because like we know a woman was like zip tied and kidnapped and dragged out of a town hall in Idaho by her hair. A doctor for doing less than that man did, and they didn't touch him. And like that went. Oh, that's a great soundbite. Like never white men need to show up at these town halls and scream.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly, again, brain sharing. That's exactly where I was going with this conversation. So you are in a district. I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on. You've got to have an opinion on this, right? You cannot sit by and just allow Elon Musk, who, by the way, could easily sit down in front of Congress and answer questions, but he won't do that. The Republicans in the GOP, in the House, have made it very clear they're going to protect him, because they know that if he's questioned, he will either lie or not be able to provide any receipts, the people's receipts, any receipts to these conversations. We know that. So here's an example. White men, go to these, demand it. Go to these town halls, contact your legislators. This is the we the people moment that they talk about all the time. This is it. We discussed this earlier. We are all on this spinning blue sphere. It's a globe. It's not flat. This spinning blue globe, we're here at a particular time in history. The question is, what are we going to do about it? White men, a system built by us, for us, to benefit us. It's about fucking time some of y'all stood up. All of us. I don't expect all, because a lot of you are entitled and you just don't give a shit. So what's important to you matters to not, it's only about what's important to you, not anybody else. But you have daughters, you have friends.
Be a hero. Be a hero.
Exactly. Be a fucking hero.
The time is now. Like, we could all just live boring, privileged existences, or be a hero, because women are tired. And we're looked at, we always talk about the gender credibility gap. Dr. Danny taught us about it, and that's the reality of, I have an amazing brain, but by nature of me just being a woman, people will not listen the same when I speak. I wish that wasn't the case, because goddamn, I'm smart. But it's just the fact, because it's scientific. So don't use your power, use your privilege, white men. Show up to these events and scream. By nature of who you are and your privilege in society, people will listen.
Exactly. I mean, it's the time has come. Like we say, every single time we ask black women to save democracy, they always step up. Always. And what's holding back our society from progress are white men in particular. White women too, but mostly white men. We are holding the entire thing back. Why? I know why. It's to maintain your place on the hierarchy. It's to because you've been convinced that you're going to win the lottery. You're convinced. Again, MAGA Republicans, MAGA moms and MAGA dads. Donald Trump allowed an adjudicated predator in Andrew Tate to come back into this country. What message does that send to your young men in your lives? Which is why I've always thought that maybe if there's an element of the MAGA population we could peel off, it would be moms. Because it would be their daughters that are going to get raped by people like Andrew Tate, and it's their sons that are going to be doing the raping. Because Andrew Tate and the President of the United States basically said, it's okay because we don't value women. Here's your moment in the sun. What are you going to do with it? I think that's a great spot to stop. So Felice, it's been an honor as always. What would you like to end with today?
Everyone find a rally, find a protest, find a town hall, find an event, right? And just attend. There's virtual town halls. And think about, like, what am I willing to do when the time comes? How will I make sure that we're going to leave it out on the field? That's what I have to say, right? Like, if we still might not win, we might lose democracy. America, this whole American experiment might be over, but I know that I'm going to be able to say, at least in my head, I gave it all I had.
So well said. Thank you. You're awesome. This has been great. We'll do this again.
I know. What brain food. Thank you for such a great conversation and such a great community you have. Thank you guys so much for having me. Have a great day. I'll text you later.
Okay. See you later. Talk to you later. Thank you, friend.
Tina, thank you so much for the $15. I just saw you sent me that on Venmo. Tina Starbuck. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Have a great Tuesday, you guys. I'll be back for the People's Receipts tomorrow, 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern. See you all then. Love you too.
Bye, Felice. Thank you, friend. So we're going to raid USMC. Matt's live. Head on over there. It's the same conversation that he's going to have that we're going to continue to have. Again, it's white men. If you're uncomfortable being called out as a white man, then don't come to this space. Plain and simple. If you're uncomfortable being called out and told that you have privilege, then don't show up here, because you're going to hear it from me every single day. One thing I will be is consistent in that regard. Again, system built by people who look like me to benefit people who look like me. And it's not going to change until those same people do something about it. Thank you, mods. Appreciate you guys very much. Just as a reminder, coming up on Thursday, we're going to do a live that's dedicated to promoting small businesses in America, because we need to, and we need to give them voices and opportunities to tell us what they do and who they are. Love you all. Thank you, mods. Guys, go raid Matt. Tell me